So, The Last of Us Part 2. I've been waiting a long time to play this game. The first one was met with universal praise by both gamers and the mainstream video game journalists. However, the second game seems to be very polarizing depending on who you talk to. On one hand, you had a great majority of gamers saying it was trash. And on the other hand, you had the mainstream video game publications saying it was a modern-day masterpiece of writing, characters, and representation. The divide only seemed to get worse when Brie Larson, one of the most polarizing actresses in Hollywood for her, let's just say, questionable hot takes, was to present the Best Performance category at the VGAs, with both Ellie and Abby being nominated. Even I have to admit, it's a little coincidental. The game seemed to invoke the best and worst in people. I wondered, how was this possible? How could a game series that was established as one of the best gaming had to offer be met with such equal amounts of ire and praise? Was American politics really that divided? Or are there more objective reasons why? These questions gnawed at me for quite some time. I decided to do a playthrough of the game with eyes unclouded. It was almost impossible to avoid spoilers for this long, especially since a major portion of the game leaked online a few weeks before it came out, and let's not even get into the questionable work ethic that seems to permeate through all the game development studios nowadays. I'm talking about crunch, and I'm not talking about the captain. This review, if you'd like to call it that, is structured very linearly. I'll be going through the game in order I played it in. I'll also discuss points I liked and didn't like, as they show up. I'll also show my initial reactions at certain points so you can see my genuine real-time reaction to the events as they unfold. I guess you could view this as a pseudo-documentary of my experience, with some memes thrown in. Playing this game was an odyssey in and of itself, with no fault of its own, I may add. I wanted to start recording when it first came out, but my PS4's hard drive died on me. When I got that fixed, I was about 7.5 hours in, or about 3 to 4 gameplay sessions, when a Windows and graphics driver update somehow caused all of my recordings and the project itself to be deleted, which lost about 20 to 30 hours of editing. Even the backups were somehow deleted. So I had to start over. My initial reactions, unfortunately, were lost and are priceless. I'm so pissed I can't show them all to you. I then replayed the first 2.5 hours about 3 times, getting crappier footage every time, before I got smart to do a test recording to solve some of the issues. Long story short, I slowly lost my mind over 4 to 5 days trying to figure out why the video was so crappy, only to find out all I needed was an internal SSD to record to instead of my hard drive. To say this project has my blood, sweat, and tears in it is kind of a lie. I wouldn't cry over something like that. But the rest might be true. Because of this, the first couple of gameplay sections I will talk with the benefit of hindsight instead of my blind reaction. I think it goes without saying this is going to be a pretty heavy spoiler analysis. If you plan to at least play the first game, I'd recommend you do that before going any further. Enough pleasantries. Let's game. So the first thing I noticed was the vast amount of visual and gameplay handicap options there were. Mostly the colorblind options, which I was impressed with. It's good to see them thinking about visual handicaps, something I worry about on a semi-regular basis. However, there was also quite a lot of features that borderline broke the game. I'm not sure if these features were here at launch or patched in later, but to make it so that you're invisible to the enemy if you go prone is quite OP. But I guess the video game journalist gotta finish the game sometime soon. Yet with how long it took me to make this, I can't really judge. So the game starts with Joel cleaning a guitar's fretboards. I guess accurate guitar maintenance is very important to Naughty Dog's writers. It's not though, you'll see why later. Joel airs out his dirty laundry to Tommy like he's a senator at a tell-all, but instead of not saying anything of importance and hinting that the juicy information will be addressed in their latest book,
Joel outright tells Tommy everything that happened in the last section of the previous game. He tells Tommy how he found the building that he was supposed to deliver Ellie to, how the Fireflies prepped her for surgery without her consent. They claim that with some duct tape and a little bit of Lysol they found underneath the kitchen sink, they can reverse engineer a vaccine by dissecting her brain. An issue I'm having with the game already is how Joel is presenting how his choice was at the end of the first game. He doesn't say anything about the Fireflies or the absolute incompetence they have shown until this point. Even in the previous game, I was incredibly skeptical of the Fireflies. They always seem like they are being pushed to the brink of collapse. The only successful thing I see them do in the first game is a bombing in the first 15 minutes. After that, they're kind of a joke. I mean, the first interaction with the Fireflies is when you meet their leader, who's been shot in some sort of botched attack or ambush. When the first group of people you're supposed to meet to take Ellie and trade the guns with are found dead, Tess guilt trips Joel with a final request, and you track down the Fireflies with the help of Tommy to a research base that's completely deserted because the base has been compromised, but I don't think they actually ever explain why. Like, does being compromised mean it got overrun with infected? Did the government or bandits catch on to their location? They had to move? Anyways, the last remaining researcher there gets bit by a monkey he infected with the virus for testing. How exactly did he put himself in a position to get infected? He wanted the monkeys to go free instead of dying in a cage. Isn't that just the fucking definition of irony? I feel like letting an infected animal run free is a little unprofessional. Like, yeah, it would be pretty horrible to kill all the monkeys, like his higher-ups told him to, but I feel like it's opening a whole new can of worms to let out a bunch of asymptomatic monkeys out into the wild. Like, who knows how much a mutated fungus could change from animal to animal? And sadly, these are the only examples to show how the Fireflies run their organization and medical research. I can see how the Fireflies were a force to be reckoned with when the infection first started, but now they're a shadow of what they used to be. Maybe the game's writers didn't think of how their story would look on paper and just wanted a bunch of video gamey ways to push the story forward, which is a valid point, and trust me, I get it. But to me, I think we have to take Naughty Dog's big boy storytelling here seriously, like they've clearly shown us when the studio was going through growing pains during the Jack series. They wanted to create real works of art with stories that could rival movies. And because of this, it's hard for me to ignore these points. Also, in some voice recordings in the first game, the doctor gives a hint that it's not necessarily clear if dissecting her brain is even going to lead to a cure, but instead it's a slim chance they should take anyways. It's like a drug company who had no prior experience manufacturing drugs releasing the cure for cancer. I would be hella skeptical. Also, I'm not a doctor, but why wouldn't a strand of DNA or genes play a bigger factor in immunity than a whole brain? Maybe I'm just reading too much into this, and it's just a game. But in my mind, these are important contradictions, and are incredibly hard to ignore. And in my eyes, it even casts doubt on the ambiguity of the original game's ending, making Joel's choice seem more logical. Let's play devil's advocate. Let's say, even somehow, that scavenging the right amount of Lysol and tie the right duct tape knot will create a vaccine. How much you want to bet they would lord it over everyone's head and use it to gain political power? Also, the vaccine is not useful against 90% of infected encounters where a chunk of your neck is ripped open. I gotta give the Fireflies at least a little bit of credit for having a decent military unit for what should be the most important place in the world. Anyways, sorry for the side rant. Back to the story. Tommy and Joel ride back into town on their horses. Oh yeah, remember that commune Tommy built in the previous game? Yeah, it's freaking huge now. Anyways, since Tommy's a true OG, he says he'll take Joel's secret to the grave. Joel goes to see Ellie, and as their conversation progresses, it's quite obvious to see there's still some awkwardness on Ellie's part. She's probably still skeptical of Joel's story at best. He seems to smooth things over with her by giving her a guitar and busting out a banger of a song. If anything, Naughty Dog deserved best music just for this song alone, at least until I learned it was a cover. Still a great performance by Troy Baker, though. It then jumps 4 years later, and Ellie is awoken by a knock at the door. She answers it, and we're introduced to Jesse. Before we go any further, I'd like to point out some interesting similarities I've noticed between the two games. In the first game, Joel gets a gift from his daughter, there's a time jump, and then he's awoken by Tess knocking on the door. In the second one, Joel gives Ellie a gift, then there's a time jump, then Ellie is awoken by Jesse knocking. The parallels are interesting and does make me feel a little nostalgic. Although no one has died yet, this puts me immediately on edge. Anyway, so Jesse asked what was with last night.
I heard you had quite a night after I left.
She kissed me. It was just Dina being Dina. She didn't mean anything by it.
I was talking about your fight with Seth. Wait, you kissed Dina?
Oh, shit!
Jesse doesn't seem too butthurt over it necessarily, just more shocked than anything. I would be too, if I had Jesse's girl.
Smells fine.
He says Maria, Tommy's wife, wants to see us. On the way over, we learn it's the day after a large party at the compound, which I'm assuming is the winter dance shown on this flyer. We get more explanation as to what happened at the party through Jesse and Ellie's dialogue. Ellie kissed Dina at the dance, which caused some guy named Seth to say some slick shit about their PDA. Joel didn't take too kindly to this compliment, which leads to Joel shoving him. Ellie then gets angry at Joel and left embarrassed. I'm sure the details will be revealed later. Something I'll say here is that I really liked how they fleshed out the city. It's definitely way more than the initial 20 or so families that were the pseudo-founders. There's a marketplace where people buy and sell goods and services, a garden area where people grow food in temperature-controlled tents. Most importantly, the whole encampment has electricity. At first, I was confused how this was possible, but I remembered in the first game they got the hydroelectric dam just outside the city up and running, which would give them more energy than they would know what to do with. Although I can see how this would make them vulnerable in some way, if it was left unguarded. One thing I loved was how there were actual kids doing kid stuff. Like the 10 to 14-year-olds were having a snowball fight on the playground. The 4 to 9-year-olds were building snow forts and making snowmen and snow angels. You even see a 1-year-old learning how to walk. Look how damn cute he is. I was amazed how much detail they put into certain things when most towns in other games only have people from about 18 to 90 years old, and all the kids are perpetually 10 years old. Looking at you, Fallout. I know you're an open world game, so I'll cut you a little bit of slack, but just try to get on their level. You can start by getting rid of that duct-taped, held-together mess you call an engine. You better really bring your A game when the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, or I'll denounce Todd Howard as our personal Lord and Savior. Sorry for the side rant. So we meet Tommy's wife at a bar, where she brings out Seth, the guy who insulted Ellie and Dina. But Ellie wants nothing to do with him.
Look, last night I was drinking too much.
Whatever you say, bitch.
Seth blames it on the alcohol, but judging by his body language, I would say he's just doing this to save face and doesn't really mean it. He gives Ellie a couple of steak sandwiches for her patrol. She quickly gives them to Jesse when he's out of eyesight though, which is a shame really. Anyone who gives me a steak sandwich is still a bigot, but a pretty cool bigot. On the walk to retrieve Dina, you learn Joel and Tommy travel to take care of some reported infected to the north, and Maria needs Jesse to relieve them, while Ellie and Dina do a basic patrol route. Future Mr.LetsGame here. I've noticed a lot of people on YouTube thought Dina and Ellie were supposed to relieve Joel and Tommy, which makes more sense than just Jesse relieving them. But no, you heard it right. Jesse alone is going to relieve them. I mean, what if the infected were too much for them to handle and they needed some serious backup?
We get your girlfriend to the stables, please.
Something tells me this guy ain't over it. So Dina's playing with some kids. Her and Ellie talk briefly about their kiss last night before one of the little shits hits Ellie with a snowball. This causes them to murk every one of them. Pretty good way to show the throwing mechanic.
Cap your ass and your ass. You want some too? Ice cold, baby. I knew I was the chosen one.
So we saddle up with a group to do a patrol, check the outposts, clear any infected, and report our findings. We're getting geared up, and Jesse gives me a bolt-action rifle and gives Dina a fucking semi-automatic? I mean, seriously. The infected are dangerous at close quarters. You need a weapon that can fire off multiple shots in quick succession. Now I know this dude's being a little bitch about it. Oh well. I guess that's what Ellie gets for messing around with the gun giver's ex. Totally broke the bro code on that one. So far, the relationship between Dina, Ellie, and Jesse seems like it would fit nicely in a soap opera. I mean, seriously, come on. So as Ellie is traveling up to the next outpost, suddenly the perception changes to a group of people in some sort of modern cabin. We're then introduced to our second playable character, Abby. So normally I wouldn't really care about this sort of thing, but I just want to point out that Abby is built like a freaking tank. God damn, look at those guns! I mean, she's about the same body size as Joel. If you look at the concept art for Abby, she looks a lot different, but still pretty badass. I'm just curious as to the reason for this drastic change in appearance. I have so many questions right now about her physical appearance, but I'll hold off on my opinion until the game's finished. Or in the more likely case, as my questions are answered. Abby then starts talking to this guy whose name is Owen. He says he has something to show her, and leads her to a cliff where they see a compound and theorize the man they are looking for is in there. Is it Joel? I'm pretty sure it's Joel. I'm not going to blame them for a weak attempt to hide the fact that it's Joel, since it would be easier to make a list of people who wouldn't kill Joel at this point. Abby then notes that Owen's acting weird. And I do admit he is being a little short with her, and is acting pretty sus, especially when this chick Mel is mentioned.
We can corner one of the patrols and get confirmation, and then, I don't know, maybe find a way to lure him out.
Yeah, okay. Sure, they'll be happy to offer that information up.
Well, then we make them.
You hear yourself?
What is going on with you?
Mel's pregnant.
Abby gets really fucking pissed when he says this, saying that they're so close to catching the man. Owen says the group will most likely elect to turn back because of the sheer number of the people in the base. Abby says fuck that and decides to go check out the nearest lookout post, a little bit away from the compound. It's been a little bit of an odd change of pace switching between the characters, but so far so good. I'm really enjoying it, although not much has really happened and no real combat has been done, so we'll see. It switches back to Ellie and Dina, who are shooting the shit about life and previous relationships. I get an optional chance to loot a town, which leads to a super sad post-pandemic Santa letter, where a kid wanted a doggo to keep him and his dad some company at night. I always enjoyed the side stories written on letters and notes in the previous game, and it seems like it's made a nice return. Don't get me wrong, when someone uses a dog in a story, it's almost always there to get an emotional reaction out of you, but in this case I'll give it a pass. My favorite example of this type of story by way of leaving notes is the side story of Ish from the first game. And I'm not alone in this opinion, since most of the community wanted the story of Ish to be explored in future DLCs. Just to go off on a side rant, what makes me sad is a lot of people don't even bother collecting or reading these notes. They really help flesh out the world. and you're only really experiencing half of the story Naughty Dog is trying to tell you. I have a friend who still to this day only knows half of the story since he never read a single note. So nothing else really happens in this little side area until we come across this moose which has been eaten alive by the infected, which I was not aware the infected ate animals or even that the runners ate at all. Maybe they mentioned it in the previous game, or it was just kind of implied and I didn't really hear about it. Anyways, they clear out the place and move on. A blizzard hits them, so they take shelter in a library formerly inhabited by a guy named Eugene, which they briefly mentioned earlier. While I do have my personal issues with this character, I can't deny he's a fucking legend. He has a lot of old tech hidden away, like computers, and of course a PS3s. As you explore this place, Dina tells you about how she learned about electronics under him, something that will no doubt come up later in the game. They mention Eugene died 3 months ago, and that he was 73, which means he must have been around 50 when the outbreak took place, joined the Fireflies, and was a member of a bombing team that helped blow up a command post, which killed 3 guards and 2 civilians. Oh well, I guess we all can't be winners. Although I lose even more respect for him when I read a note that his family wrote him. He abandoned his wife and daughter to join the Fireflies. Kind of a dick move. Seems like the Fireflies attract a very special type of person. Although, to be fair, the government was pretty authoritative around this point. Anyways, after turning on a generator in typical Last of Us fashion, they find a hidden grow room behind a bookshelf. Most of the plants have died out, except a jar housing a handful of the kindest bud, rolled in perfect cones. Truly a lost art. They figure they should smoke some since they're trapped in because of the weather. While passing around the bone, Dina brings up their kiss last night, and Ellie says Dina told her it was an accident, so why bring it up at all? And blah blah blah. Why is this team drama soap opera shit in my game? Although I can't complain for too long, because before you know it, they start doing the horizontal Charleston. It's still early in the game, but I hope they show what Ellie and Dina see in each other besides proximity. Well, they seem to be having a better time than Abby, who's running away from a horde of infected. I was legit anxious as I frantically searched for a place to run. She then gets pinned by an infected, but before she can be bitten, someone shoots it off of her. And who else but Joel, with Tommy right behind him. I mean, okay. With the information I know about Joel at this point, I would expect him to see this as a great opportunity to cheese it while Abby gets turned into Swiss cheese. I guess I can excuse this since Joel and Tommy have been at the compound for about 5 years now, and I would imagine Joel has seen how useful the collaboration of people can be. I just wish we would have seen this. I mean, it's a little hard to believe. I get it though, strength in numbers and all. So they free Abby, and there's a section where Tommy moves a heavy object to a wall so they can use it to escape out the top window. Pretty typical video game stuff. Although this section really made me appreciate the dynamic animation system in combat. It feels like every punch is unique in some way. And I love how they brought back environmental finishers, where if an enemy is in a damaged state and knocked up against a wall, you can finish them off by slamming their head into a wall or table, causing an explosive bloody finisher on an infected or a face-crunching impact on a human enemy. So they run to a temporarily safe location. Tommy introduces him and Joel to Abby, and she looks like she just pooped her pants. The game plays it off cool for people who haven't caught on by now, but it's pretty obvious at this point. I think the only people who wouldn't pick up on this are people who haven't played the first one, but then, of course, why would you even play the second one? I mean, look at her. She's darting her eyes at Joel like she's watching Bill Cosby make her a drink. But if you're big brain challenged like me in my first playthrough, you could see this as her getting scared the infected were about to break in at any moment. But combined with everything we've seen so far, how a group of survivors who have clearly traveled all this way to find a single man, we can infer it's Joel. Also, why are they cool with telling strangers their name? Especially knowing Joel has made lots of enemies. Anyways, Joel mentions the horses won't be able to make it far in the current weather. Abby tells them about the group she has at the lounge, and they decide to depart before the Mushroom Boys can get them. Kind of a coincidence their horses were right there. We then switch back to Ellie and Dina. They seem to be enjoying a post-coital talk while comparing battle scars. And Ellie drops a bomb on Dina. And I'm not talking about how it's probably looking very hairy south of the border right now.
Oh, shit!
I get it though, blades are hard to come by in the apocalypse. Ellie tells Dina that she was bitten, and shows her the tattoo she got to cover it up, and the chemical burn just underneath that she used to further cover up the bite. But Dina thinks she's bullshitting her. They start getting a bit more sensual with each other, but before they can get back to round 2, Jesse shows off his promotion to Captain Buzzkill as he rushes into the room and the girls scramble to put their clothes back on. Jesse is pissed. Not for catching them banging a week after Dina broke up, even though I know he's probably feeling like a cuck right about now. Pff, trust me, I've been there, buddy. But because they had a job to do, and people count on them. Not gonna lie, I kinda like Jesse. Like, he's serious most of the time, and we haven't really seen too much of him yet. But he seems like one of those tough but fair types, who's all about honor and dignity. Jesse then tells them that Joel and Tommy never came back from clearing the infected to the north, and he saw the lights to the library while he was trying to find their horses? What? Am I the only one who's thinking this is a pretty big coincidence? First off, Ellie and Dina barely made it to the library, and they only knew where it was because Dina knew the way. I doubt Jesse could find it in the middle of a blizzard even with all the lights on. I mean, look how bad it looks out there. Can you see shit in this blizzard? I don't think so. Also, this patrol board might imply that the locations of the patrols are either nowhere near each other or right next to each other. I don't have a map, and it's been hard to judge where everything is with the character swapping and the blizzard. But the game's on thin ice here, man. I also have an issue with Ellie's decision here. They decide to split up to cover more ground. But I feel like if 2 of your strongest and most resourceful guys go missing after searching a large group of infected, you might need the numbers. Hindsight, right? At least Jesse comments on how going solo isn't the best idea. You can definitely see the fear on Ellie's face is palpable. It switches back to Joel, Tommy, and Abby, who arrive at the lounge, where the group helps them finish off the infected chasing them with some Molotov cocktails. Right as everyone's settling down, introducing themselves, Tommy talks about bringing them back to Jackson since they can always use new people with new skills to help around the compound. I'm fairly certain he means after a long probationary period, right? He then introduces himself and Joel to the group, which I'm sure is a good decision. He should have no reason to be skeptical of why they're so well equipped, all have the same emblem on their jackets, or why they haven't announced their presence being so close to the base, and possibly housing themselves in one of their patrol routes. And as expected, when Tommy introduces Joel, everybody's faces change, like they're a bunch of Italians meeting the first man who put a pineapple on a pizza. Joel comments on the pregnant room, saying,
Like you heard of us or something.
Abby then says,
They have.
and blows Joel's right knee with a fucking shotgun, while the remaining members bum rush Tommy and pistol whip him in the face until he's unconscious. They hold Joel up against the wall, and Abby asks if he knows who she is and what he has done. Joel then says the most badass thing I've heard him say all game, which is not a lot, I may add.
Why don't you say whatever speech you got rehearsed? Get this over with.
At death's door and still a badass. What a fucking legend. Abby then orders the group to tourniquet his leg. She grabs a golf club and says,
You stupid old man. You don't get to rush this.
Hole in one!
I'm not gonna lie, this scene was one of the hardest I've ever had to watch in a video game. As I've said before, I really wish I had my initial gameplay recording, but trust me when I say I was not happy about this decision. But yeah, I've seen this many times in editing and it breaks my heart every time. I'll discuss why I think this is a bad decision when it comes to writing later. Right then it switches back to Ellie, who's freaking out. She enters the lounge and hears Joel screaming in pain. I was actually anxious to get to Joel, so much that I actually stopped the looting and frantically searched the house for him. His screams of pain were just too much to bear. She walks in the room, seeing Joel on the floor and Abby towering over him with a golf club swinging away, both looking like they wouldn't be out of place in Tiger Woods' PGA Tour 2021 Domestic Violence Edition. It takes all of about 1 second for Ellie to be disarmed and grappled to the floor. Like, really? You're telling me she had the upper hand and couldn't get so much as a shot off in Abby's general direction? She begs for them to stop, but of course they don't. Ellie and Joel look at each other for what is the last time they will see each other alive. But to us, this is the first time we've seen them both together in the same room since the time jump. Great. Abby then delivers the killing blow, and Ellie yells out in sorrow and anger. Then this guy, who will probably soon have the nickname Scarface because of Ellie, thanks her with his boot to her face. I don't know why he's so pissed. He's gonna get all the bitches with that scar. I really don't know what to think about all this. Like, I feel angry that Joel died, not because he died, because I was very certain he would die, but it's how we've been led up to his killing that pisses me off. I mean, he only had enough dialogue for about 2 or 3 tweets, and then he's killed. We don't even get a single moment between Joel and Ellie. He didn't even utter a single word to her when he was being killed. Maybe if he said something like, "Be strong, baby girl," or anything before he died, maybe I'd feel a little bit different. I'm not so thick as to not see what they're going for here. They wanted a no one gets a glorified death in a world as brutal as this one. People get jumped and die alone for messed up reasons, and there's nothing you can do about it. I totally get it, but it's how we got here that pisses me off. We haven't even seen Joel and Ellie interact once since the 4-year time jump. It's almost like the writers didn't care enough about Joel to give him a proper send-off? I'm sure that's not what's going on, but that's how I feel. It's only been 2 hours, and already there are some major jumps in logic you have to make to progress the story. Another thing I've noticed is all the damn inconsistencies, coincidences, and slight plot holes I've found just in the first 2 hours alone. I mean, one of the first places Abby checks, she finds Joel, who just so happens to be there and just so happens to save her without question. Ellie and Dina get caught in a blizzard and take shelter in a library, and Jesse, who just so happens to find Eugene's hideout in the middle of a blizzard with no explanation. Also, why is Tommy one of the self-appointed leaders of the compound going on a dangerous patrol mission to clear out a horde of infected? If he volunteered, well, that's actually really badass. I feel like that's a missed opportunity to show us while Tommy, if he wanted to, could have a comfy desk job, but he chooses to go out and patrol the compound. On the other hand, it can be seen as a little reckless to put one of your leaders in a position to be killed or captured. That's like the vice president being part of a scouting unit. Like, yeah, they can do that, but their true time is better used overseeing military units, strategy, or running the country. Well, in theory anyways. Also, a little bit more nitpicking here. but I wish they could have touched more on Tommy's construction experience, since he has more skills than just shooting things. I would have accepted a throwaway line on how Tommy was able to build the wall around the city twice as fast as estimated. Anyways, right now, I'm pissed. Really pissed at this drastically odd way of killing off the main character of the previous game. He even saved the life of his attacker, only for her group to overwhelm them and brutalize him. The way that the game presents Joel's death is also pretty odd too. It'd be like my friends telling me my best friend who I haven't hit up in a while just died, and all of them being like, "What, that guy? You were friends with him? Oh, he was a piece of shit, fuck that guy." But hey, did you meet Addison? He's pretty cool, right? Like instead, what if this is the way Abby was introduced? She's alone, in a cabin, looking out of the top window, facing the compound, with a notepad, pencil, binoculars, and a shit ton of open canned food around her, documenting every patrol that comes out, how many men are in it, at what time, and where they head off to. This shows she's been preparing for the encounter with Joel for days. And for the players who are extremely observant, you could look in Abby's backpack to find notes from her friends or commanding officers being concerned how dedicated to working out she is, and how much extra canned food and ammo she's been collecting, showing that she was so determined that she's hunting Joel by herself. And when she sees Tommy and Joel go to the lounge, she's ready for them, and has the whole place booby-trapped. And there's this cat and mouse type of battle that happens, where she wounds Tommy, and through pure skill, patience, and a little bit of luck, is able to best them. I understand my version isn't anywhere near perfect, but I feel like it would have been more satisfying than what we got. One more thing we need to take into account before we progress is the first game was a Joel and Ellie game. It was about their relationship and how it evolved over time. By killing off Joel so early, they're killing off half the game and making you play as their killer? Anyways, let's continue. Ellie's awoken by Dina and sees Joel's body. Some time passes and we see Ellie being visited by Tommy. He says they can't spend the manpower to send out a team to find Joel's killers, and that they don't know where they came from. Ellie points out that their jacket said Washington Liberation Front, but Tommy says they could have stolen those. Dude, really? Ellie correctly points out that he's talking some bitch shit his wife would say. Really shows who wears the pants in their relationship. To be fair, I thought Tommy was just being thick here, and so did most reviewers of the game. But may I enter Exhibit A? Look at this guy's face. He knows Ellie's right. If this happened to him, Joel would be hot on their ass with some Tabasco sauce, a telephone pole, and a slow death for each of them. So Tommy says she needs to wait a few days so he can get a group together, and she agrees. I'm not sure how much time has passed, but enough time for Joel to be buried. Ellie's at Joel's grave and meets Dina where they go to his house before trying to sneak out. I really enjoy this part because you can tell which house is Joel's just by looking at it. The amount of flowers and unopened cards are very touching. That is what I love to see, some attention to detail and respect for the character. You check around the house and Ellie sniffs Joel's jacket. Normally I would think this is pretty weird, but in this situation, it actually made me feel a little emotional. She opens a box and there is Joel's iconic revolver, a beautiful gun that brings back many memories. Dina yells from downstairs to come down. I correctly guessed at this point that it was either Maria or the former shell of a human known as Tommy. It's Maria. She tells them Tommy wanted to be a real boy and left a note saying he was going to go avenge Joel.
Okay.
Ellie correctly points out Tommy knew that they wanted revenge, so he should have taken them with her. I would have loved to have seen a Tommy and Ellie adventure. Maybe my fan fiction will still become a reality later in the game. She tells them they can have one horse and some supplies, since they're probably gonna try to escape anyways. She tells them to please bring back my dumbass husband. In most situations, this line would make my eyes roll and I'd have a cringe attack for 3 minutes. But actually, I do agree with her here. These guys are rolling 6 members deep at the very least. I hope he's better than Ellie at catching the enemy off guard. Maybe that pistol whip to the head made him forget about that ass whooping. And I hope it also blessed him with foresight to be more cautious about trusting new people. All in all, it was an okay start to the game. The combat is much better with the addition of the dedicated dodge button, but not much else. I just started playing, so maybe there will be more mechanics introduced, like better stealth or interrogations when you capture enemies. Not gonna lie though, Joel's death really took a lot out of me. Maybe my rage is just too blinding at the moment, but I just can't get over how dumb it is to kill off one of the best characters in video game history without spending at least a little bit of time with him. I gotta admit, it's a pretty ballsy move. I don't necessarily think it paid off though. So far, it's like eating my favorite sushi roll that's been sitting in a damp fridge for a day. Yeah, it's okay. And by itself, it's actually pretty great. But it leaves a lot to be desired when doing a comparison. I'm not gonna lie, I had to take a bit of a break after the last gameplay section. The first time I played through this section, I think it was about a month-long break or so. Joel's death really took a lot out of me, among other personal issues. But I came back with renewed vigor and determination. After what's happened, Ellie could be guided by Joel and her dead mom's ghost, and I wouldn't even bat an eye with the amount of coincidences I've seen so far. But just because something had a rocky start doesn't mean it can't redeem itself. So Ellie and Dina are tromping through the forest with their trusty steed, who I forgot to mention is named Shimmer. They're discussing why Joel was killed, but he had so many enemies, it's impossible to pin down a faction or a motive, which is by far the most logical thing I've heard so far in this game. Something I've noticed in the game that I forgot to mention earlier are these old Marvel-like trading cards I've been finding scattered around. These are obviously modeled after the old Marvel trading cards from the 90s. I remember I used to see these things every once in a while back in my childhood when I'd visited a garage sale. I haven't really been reading them too much, but they are kind of cool to find. And the characters do kind of seem like they would be part of a comic book universe. This reminds me of the first game when they used comic books as the collectible items, but I actually like this better. So we make it to the quarantine zone, which seemed to have been run by a government group called Fedra, and is surrounded by a ginormous wall that would make even Donald proud. There's a note left behind that instructs the reader to give a specific guard named Kieran a kilo, and they can enter the QZ. I'm pretty sure they're not talking about Himalayan pink salt. Anyway, so I climb over the top of the wall, and I find this letter written by a man named Isaac and a woman named... What the fuck? Really? Zelda. Their names are Zelda and Isaac. Now all I can think about is playing Breath of the Wild and Dead Space. Whatever. Anyways, besides the strange name, the letter tells Zelda to take care of one of the guards at the front gate and to let in more WLF units. Once they do that, they are to coordinate with the moles that have been placed in the refugee line. It goes on to say, once they have control of the area, to offer the refugees entry in exchange for joining the WLF. Damn, that sounds like a really good plan in theory. I'm not sure if this is recent or kind of a WLF highlight reel from a few years ago. These guys already seem way more serious, organized, and strategic than the Fireflies. See, this is what I was asking for in the previous game. Give me a reason to be scared of these guys. Give me a good example of why I should take these guys seriously. Maybe I'll eat those words later. But for now, good job, Naughty Dog. You're making me actually scared to run into one of these guys. I take a quick look at my inventory. I like how Ellie writes in her journal. It's good to see Naughty Dog took a great mechanic from their Uncharted series, although it isn't used nearly as much as I hope it would be. Ellie reads a note with a few codes, that open multiple gates around the QZ. On the back of the note, we can see it's written by Isaac. He wants the WLF to scavenge for supplies from the dome or the courthouse garage and bring them to the Saravina Hotel for an unspecified operation. It seems like it was written recently. Anyways, we let Dina into the QZ, where they discuss their plan. Ellie says she wants to grab a WLF and interrogate them to find Abby's location. I wonder who said this before.
So we find it?
Hopefully we find our first WLF. Get them to talk. Go from there.
Let's do it.
We can corner one of the patrols and get confirmation, and then, I don't know, maybe find a way to lure him out.
They find the hotel, but there's a gate in the way. They try to use the generator, but it's out of gas, which is a first in the series now that I think about it. So they decide to take the note's advice and check out the courthouse garage and the dome.
Pretty sure we're here. Ah, nice.
I don't know why, but that's one of the coolest ways I've seen a map introduced in a video game so far. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I really like the way you can approach this city. It's like this pseudo-open world that you can tackle objectives in any way that you want, or go off and do a side adventure. It's quite a breath of fresh air, especially compared to the first game, which was more linear in its exploration. A good example of this is the messenger bag I found with a note from a scavenger saying there was some pre-war supplies in this bank. I decided to go check it out. When we get down there, the place is crawling with the previous scavengers who got infected, among with a few super old infected wearing body armor. I actually wasted a couple of shots shooting the infected with the body armor on. That's a nice touch. I kept getting spotted by these clickers, but I realized that the lore reason for this is that they use echolocation when they're suspicious that a human's around, and if you're caught in that, it will lead to an instant alert. We find out the old-ass body armor infected were originally a group of robbers trying to pull a GTA-level worthy heist on the bank right when the infection first happened, thinking that they could hit the bank and slip out in the confusion. Not a bad idea, to be honest, although I guess in execution they didn't count on the infected having such high numbers and were overwhelmed. The newly infected runners seem to be the remains of the scavengers in the note who dared to venture too far. We cracked the vault and found the other half of the bank robber's story in the form of a skeleton with half his head blown off. He has a random note lying next to him. It seems like he got bitten during the heist and was locked in the vault by accident, started to turn, so he decided to go out on his own terms. I loved every bit of this investigative side quest, and we also got a spanking shotgun and an Uncharted Easter egg out of it. Hopefully there's more of this in the future. We head out and there isn't too much to comment on for a little while. There's a campfire that's possibly Tommy's, some supplies from a few destroyed buildings, and looting a burnt up corpse inside of a tank, which really blew my mind the first time I played this for some reason. Anyway, so I decided to hit the dome first, because I hit the courthouse garage in my first playthrough. I get tired of getting crap upgrade materials and getting spotted every time I sneaked, so I changed the settings from survival down to hard before going inside. Yeah, I know, I'm a casual, but I want to get this video out sometime soon. Turns out the dome is a synagogue, and Dina is Jewish. I actually really like this section. A lot of games kind of go for the faithless character in post-apocalyptic games, so this is kind of a breath of fresh air to have a character that has some religious faith in such a hopeless world. Just my opinion. I gotta admit, it was pretty cool learning about the Torah and Hebrew calendars, which Ellie was just as ignorant as I was. Look at you, Naughty Dog, for teaching us about one of the most oppressed races in history. Thumbs up. I do kind of wish they did more with this angle. Speaking of which, I came across this note which was addressed to a Lieutenant Torres from the rabbi of the synagogue, thanking the federal lieutenant for not only helping him and his family flee, but for sparing some men to escort them from the city. The only question I have is, why is this letter still in the synagogue instead of with the lieutenant? Either this is just for the player's convenience, or something really bad happened to them before they could send it. Or Naughty Dog wanted this to be ambiguous on purpose. Anyway, so I came across a workbench for my guns, and I really like how they have the customization here. You just buy the upgrades once, and the stats are fully maxed out, unlike how it was in the first game, where you bought it in chunks. I also really like how you not only see Ellie working on the upgrade, but that it has an actual physical change to your gun when it's upgraded. The first place we loot is a music store. Ellie decides to try out this guitar she finds, in perfect condition I may add. Remember when I was talking about guitar maintenance? Once again, the song's a banger. This time it's a cover from Take On Me by Aha. And it's also kind of funny because Dina at times is just like phasing out. And it reminds me of when my musically talented friends would just jam for hours while I watched and kind of felt like a third wheel. This was a real nice change of pace. I can't wait for them to do more of this later. So while editing this video, I noticed this writing on the walls in some places. And for some reason, I thought this was Japanese kanji or something like that. But it actually just says WLF. And you can usually find some not so hidden supplies or notes from WLF members that tell you another location to get supplies at. It's my 4th time playing through this section of the game, and I just noticed this. So we make our way to the courthouse, and other than the aesthetic of this place, there isn't really too much to comment on, other than some Fedra members who've been executed in the lobby down below. One of them seemed to have a friend who defected to the WLF, who was begging this Fedra member to join them to secure their safety. She asked him to meet her at the coffee shop. Maybe we'll stop by there later. We also find another body in the other room, who we can assume is either Captain Paul Douglas, which is the name of the recipient of this letter, or Lieutenant Torres, who died before he could send it. To me, it's unclear who it is. I would assume it's the lieutenant, since I would imagine the captain would be one of the first to leave, since he outranks him, but I'm not certain. That is something I've noticed about this game that kind of pissed me off. It's not clear if the person found with the note was the recipient or the sender who died before they could send it. Especially in this case. Maybe I'm not understanding the situation properly, so I'll see if we get confirmation on this later. Whatever the case, one of the men died while the other's fate is unknown. One thing we do learn is we get a bigger picture of what happened. It seems like the WLF attack mixed with an unknown religious fanatic group was too much for Fedra, and they underestimated them losing too many key locations before learning their mistake, and that the tipping point had already happened. They decided to retreat, and as of now, their ultimate fate is unknown. So we make it into the parking garage in the basement, kill a bunch of infected, which I think were WLF soldiers based on what they're wearing, but you can be the judge. We get the gas and get the hell out of here. I do like how the gas can pokes out of Ellie's backpack, just saying. I decided to go to the coffee shop that was mentioned in the note at the courthouse. I find another note inside talking about a WLF safe house. More on that in a bit. I checked the back, and I'm pretty sure I can now conclude that the woman hiding in the bathroom of this coffee shop must be the same one who wrote the note that we found on the Fedra soldier. So after I kill this jump scare, I get a key to a dog store. I try it on this door I couldn't open earlier, and inside is a WLF safe house, as stated in the previous note. Inside is a couple of supplies, including a sling for my long-barreled weapons. There's also a plan to ambush a Fedra truck, which I decide to investigate. So I really like this open world aspect of things. I like how each place almost seamlessly weaves into the next. It is very dynamic, and is definitely a highlight of this game. We go back to the gate, gas it up, and finally make it to the Saravina Hotel. It's at this point Dina points out WLF kinda sounds like wolf, and that's why their propaganda has a bunch of wolves on it. Go figure. I actually didn't realize this till she mentioned it. Maybe I'm a character in this game. Anyways, I space out since it's about 4 AM and alert all the infected in the hotel like a noob. We dispatch them and notice this place is littered with the bodies of WLF soldiers. They note these are fresh bodies, so Tommy must still be close. The real horror of Tommy's brutality is upstairs, where we find 2 men tied up in chairs tortured to death. Ellie recognizes one of the guys tied up as a wolf member who helped kill Joel. Ellie then describes the method of interrogation Tommy used to get information from them as the same one Joel used in the first game. It's a cool addition, even if Ellie over-explains it. Using the code written in blood on the floor, we get through the east gate. Thank God Dina remembered it. I did not. The horse jumped over some barbed wire and gets blown the fuck up. Dina falls down through this hole and gets away while the horse Shimmer gets fucking executed. Ellie then gets knocked out. That escalated quickly. Ellie wakes up to Scarface here, who was the only guy who Ellie was able to land a single hit on, and who knocked her unconscious after Joel's death. He starts the foreplay part of the investigation, but is stopped by this guy who recently knocked Ellie out, named Mike. Damn. Lots of head trauma in this game. Anyways, they refer to Joel as that smuggler we killed out in Jackson, which might show us that they know Joel a little bit more than I thought. Jordan wants to learn what Ellie knows since they found Nick dead and they don't know how big their unit is. Oh yeah, the guy who we found dead in the chair's name was Nick, by the way. Anyways, Mike doesn't give a shit because he just got off the radio with Isaac with an order to kill all trespassers. Nick and him debate killing or interrogating, but before they can come to an agreement, Dina saves the day. Well, sort of. Damn, they sure as hell aren't going to be in the sequel. This is also pretty damn coincidental. Now I get my first taste of human combat, and god damn is it brutal. The shotgun shreds through limbs, and stealth takedowns actually make me feel bad, unlike most games. Something I'm glad is a feature and wasn't just exaggerated by the IGN article I read back in the day, is that everyone, or if not everyone, then most enemies actually have names, and if you kill one of them using stealth or in combat, their friends will shout out their name when they spot them. I did a little research, and it seems like the enemy AI is more complex than even I thought. For instance, if an enemy sees a dead body with an arrow in it, they'll try to triangulate where the arrow came from. Also, if your stealth attack is noticed by a guard, they will search the area where they think the shot came from. That's great attention to detail. I also like how they call out each other's names after they're alerted to see who's still alive. I expertly sneak past them. They find a sexy Polaroid and a note from a girl named Leah addressed to the now deceased Jordan. She mentions a group called the Scars have been spotted in the area. This is most likely the religious fanatics they talked about earlier. They spot the TV station off in the distance and decide to head out. This is where I stop for the night. Not gonna lie, this was a pretty entertaining section. I really liked the pseudo-open world and all the side stories you could see, experience, or miss. The first time I played, I didn't even find the truck full of dead Fedra officers. The enemy AI is awesome. I cannot wait to encounter more stealth and combat sections. It is by far the most dynamic and entertaining part of the game so far. I still have a bad taste in my mouth from the shit sandwich that was Joel's death, but if they keep up the story and gameplay, it might just be worth it. So far, I haven't lost my mind. I remember at this point, I was so excited to play another part of the game that I actually skipped the script writing. Although it didn't matter much since I lost all my recordings anyway. Anyways, let's get through this section so I can start recording some actual gameplay reactions. Other than a jump scare, there's not too much to this first part of the area. Just a bunch of wolf members patrolling the area. I kind of broke the dialogue here, because I got spotted and ran into another patrol group.
They don't want to be here, then they don't want to be here.
I would like to take this time to discuss a disgustingly brutal mechanic that isn't outright told to you. My friend is playing through the game at the same time I am, and he told me to do this. Apparently when there's one enemy left in the area, if you wound them, they'll be too weak to move and they'll say some very disturbing dialogue. Some will beg for their life, others, just like Joel, will ask you to get it over with. This is the ultimate playing with your food type of mechanic, and I love it. I don't think I've ever seen this in another game. Well, actually maybe Red Dead Redemption 2. So there's this Halloween store with some masks, and Ellie seems indifferent to it.
I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan. I remember a time in the Left Behind DLC when Ellie would put on one of these masks and scare Dina. But perhaps she's finally grown up, or she's fronting for Dina. There's a small side story on a note here in the area documenting the relationship between a Fran and Rebecca. So far I don't think we've read about them, but it's interesting. Rebecca tells Fran to keep his people off the streets, and if Isaac finds out she talked, she's screwed. Is Fran a federal officer? Why else would she be scared to tell a WLF member to keep the people they care about off the streets? That'd be a pretty interesting story if so. Like a Last of Us Romeo and Juliet? Actually, that sounds kind of dumb now that I say it. Anyways, I get past the patrols, and there's this section where they booby trap the entire area. Dina wastes a lot of ammo with her smooth brain ass by not letting an infected run into the trap, which I would later walk into, so who really has the smooth brain here? During some dialogue between Ellie and Dina, Ellie makes a reference to Bill from the previous game. I hope we see him in the future. I miss his crazy ass. Dina and Ellie have a philosophical debate that boils down to, is it better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all? With Dina and Ellie arguing their points respectively. It makes sense with how many people Ellie has loved and lost over the years that she would hold this position, especially after losing the only surviving parental figure she had. We then see this mural in the middle of nowhere, and I'm assuming this is the scars they referred to earlier. We then go under an overpass, with a lot of infected and a chewed up horse right next to them. That was Tommy's. Dina pukes from the smell of the freshly killed animal. There's another section that's heavily booby trapped, so I dipped into a karate studio to avoid them. Or we get another note, but this time from Fran to Rebecca. Also, I thought when Rebecca meant the studio that they met up at, I thought she meant the TV studio, but I guess she means this karate studio. Fran says he can't come with her, since he saw who I'm assuming were WLF members kill one of his neighbors named Jimmy, who, judging by his religious speak, it's pretty clear that Jimmy was or is a Scar. Fran refuses to come with her, but instead wants Rebecca to meet him at the cabin, but I doubt they'll come back to these characters again. On replaying the gameplay clip and editing, I found that Jimmy is probably the same Jimmy they're talking about in this note from Raul to Viv. It seems like the note is implying Jimmy might be Viv's son, although Raul does seem to be a nice guy, even giving them food right after Jimmy just stole from him. If this is the same Jimmy, then he probably died stealing some shit, since he was caught stealing from Raul, and according to this note, from Fran as well at some point. Goddamn, kid. If you can't steal from your friends, it's probably not a good idea to steal from a heavily armed and violent military group. Anyways, there's a funny safe cracking bit here, where the combination is a girl's number you find written on the wall in the bathroom. The bathroom wall. The original shit-posting chat rooms. Also, I'm not sure I mentioned this, but if you listen really carefully, when you pass by the correct combination, you can actually hear the correct and incorrect pins being hit. So in theory, you actually could crack this safe without even getting the combination. So a little bit later, I learned that you can throw shit at the trip mines to blow them up so you can cross safely. Okay, this next obstacle kinda pisses me off. I understand hiding loading screens in these inconvenient sections, but look at this.
Or they might be waiting to ambush us.
Need to get in there.
What the hell was the point of that? Now they're just throwing in obstacles to annoy me. I wonder how much the level designer got paid to make that pointless obstacle. Did they really need to shave 3 seconds off the load time here? Anyways, we make it to the TV station and there's some guys outside who have been gutted with knives and arrows. I guess Tommy could have done it, but I don't really think he's a bow guy. We make it inside the main broadcast room, and there's 4 people hung by their necks with their insides on their outsides. Pretty damn brutal. We can confirm this is 100% not Tommy. There's also a weird symbol written in blood on the wall here as well. We can obviously assume that this is the Scar's work here. I make my way through the building to find Leah doing her best impression of a pincushion. We go through her shit and find a couple Polaroids of the people who killed Joel. We listen into the radio and we overhear them talking about how there's a lot of people heading to the TV station, so we cheese it. It is kind of weird they wouldn't radio in to make sure the base isn't compromised, especially since the Scars have been on the warpath lately and they've been seen in the area. We get caught leaving and have to run and gun. We manage to barely get away by escaping into some sort of boiler system for a subway. We navigate through the subway, and then my favorite mechanic in this game gets introduced. Seriously, my prayers have been answered. Ever since the first game, I wanted to lead a horde of infected onto an unsuspecting group. Maybe the tech wasn't there in the first game, but I'm pretty sure that Days Gone having a similar mechanic had absolutely nothing to do with it. So while everyone's scattering like hot grease, I take this chance to slip by in the commotion. It's about this time that the girls put together that the Scars are the religious fanatics that we've been hearing about for a while. We will no doubt meet them at some point. Yeah, no shit. I pieced that together forever ago. We also find some notes strung inside this subway cart, written by a man named Gary addressed to a woman named Jules. I'll come back to this later. After we pretend to be Nathan Drake for a little while, we're introduced to a new type of infected called a shambler. It's like a bloater, but they don't have any ranged attacks. They get close to you and shoot acid everywhere in about a 7-foot radius around you. And the area of effect lasts for a couple seconds. Despite how intimidating they look, they aren't much if you come prepared. They just need a Molotov and a hunting rifle to the face to take them down. Also, that's a good tip for anyone playing The Last of Us series in general. If you're in a pinch, use fire against the infected. It spreads quickly, and they're very, very weak to it. In this playthrough, I was actually able to slip through the first area with them undetected. We pass through some sort of employee break room that has a cool little puzzle where you have to break the glass of a vending machine to get the note for the combination on the door. The piece of paper that has invited the reader on this scavenger hunt has a very interesting article on it, but because of the way it was torn, some words are impossible to make out. It seems like it was published when the outbreak first happened. At the very least, I would say within the first year. The article is about a group of survivors that managed to protect their community from being overrun with infected for about 6 months, while all the other neighborhoods perished. I actually really like this. From what I'm able to understand, a woman started stockpiling her bunker with enough supplies to help the whole neighborhood, and says it came to her in a vision. The rest is too hard to make out. I'm pretty sure that this is alluding to the leader of the Scars and her backstory. They'll probably show her later, so this is cool foreshadowing. Psst, P.S. They don't. So there's a second shambler section, and I was able to sneak out of that again by pulling some pro gamer moves. We now get the second Jules letter, so I can give more context to the first letter. It seems like this guy Gary isn't a Scar, but he's following one and is slowly getting sucked into their cult as the days go on. He's probably someone who escaped the QZ while it was going to shit and happened to meet this Zachary character who took him under his wing. I can't imagine why. They seem to brutalize the WLF or outsiders in general. But maybe that's because they're just their enemies. Dina then pushes down this thing so I can climb up. After she gets a moment of rest, the subway cart breaks in half, and Dina is forced to save Ellie. But because of the fall, Ellie's mask got fucked up, so Dina starts freaking out and wants to share masks or something. I always thought the spores infected you right away. Like, yeah, they choked you, but Dina's acting like they can bear through it, like they're sharing the same scuba mask or some shit. Whatever. Ellie tells Dina she's immune. Okay, so something funny here. Whenever I see this, I always think of that one South Park episode.
I'm not infected. I'm immune. I'm not coughing, do you see?
Here are pictures of my trip to Cheyenne for Frontier Days. Do you see?
Again! I'm so bored!
Anyways, they have no time to talk about this revelation since the infected start pouring in, and we have to book it out of the subway. Dina collapses right when we get out, so Ellie helps her to a movie theater across the street. There, Ellie gives more explanation behind her condition.
I can't get you infected if that's what you're worried about. I can't make you immune either.
Dude, like, what if you could get sexually transmitted zombification? Like, oh my god. Like, she says she can't get her infected, but why not? Like, it's never outrightly happened before, but that guard in the first game tested her and it read as infected. So if she bit someone else, I feel like they would become infected too. I have so many questions about this mind-blowing realization. In theory, could kissing someone cause you to pass the infection through saliva? If someone had ulcers on their stomach, could they get infected by swallowing your spit, blood, or other bodily fluids? For once, I actually don't want to know the answer to any of these questions. Moving on. Looks like Dina has a secret of her own, though.
Ellie. I think I'm pregnant.
That would explain a lot, like the tiredness and why she vomited at the smell of the dead horse. Ellie is obviously pretty shocked and pissed.
What are we supposed to do now?
Nothing. I just need to rest for a second.
Are you fucking kidding? How long have you known?
I wasn't sure, okay? I didn't want to be a burden.
Well, you're a burden now, aren't you?
Oh, first big couples fight. But for real, never say that to a pregnant lady. It's not healthy for anyone, especially her. Also, she may kill you in your sleep. So Ellie decides to check out the rest of the theater while Dina is resting. Seems like they should have searched the place before getting into an argument, though. I love how the second you leave Dina, she passes out and not even a flashlight in the face will wake her up. Good attention to detail. I can personally vouch for this. Upstairs, there's a note from a Fedra soldier who built more or less what equals to a blanket fort. I'm a bit jealous, actually. I don't think I've ever created a blanket fort that cool. In the note, he mentions Torres is probably dead. Well, whatever happened, he was a true G. Anyways, so the soldiers and his friends escaped the wolves and hid out here. He caught a cold, and his friends went looking for medicine and supplies. We learned from the other note we find in the projector room next to the radio that he was either abandoned or his friends never came back for him. He decides to make the best of what he has and tries the radio to no avail. He claims he went up to the roof to fix the power problem. We find our nameless friend extra crispy and alone in front of an electrical outlet. Ellie's dialogue is slightly different here if you find his body or the note first. With the power on, Ellie tries to fix the radio with the Fonzie method. It doesn't work, but it does find the keys to the actual theater room. Who keeps keys under a radio like that? I think the world's IQ went up a point after this guy biffed it. Anyways, behind the curtain on the main stage, you see a new guitar, which Ellie picks up and tries to play, but just isn't feeling it today. Well, I think I'll end it here and... What? Joel? We get to see Joel again? I mean, yeah, the whole flashback 3 years earlier thing is a little stupid. Not to mention extremely jarring from a narrative perspective, especially how the previous game never had flashbacks. But to see Joel again, I'll deal with it. I actually decided to stay up a little bit later than I should have, just to see what this part was all about. We cut to 3 years earlier when Joel tells Ellie he has a surprise for her. This next part is pretty dialogue heavy and has no combat, but it's probably my favorite section so far. Ellie's cracking jokes every 3 seconds and it's awesome. Joel is just as funny and as cool as I remembered him. God, man, I forgot how much I miss Joel and Ellie's dynamic. Also, Joel taught Ellie to swim at some point. They really like pushing each other into water, it seems. It's a pretty organic way to show us the swimming mechanics. After some swimming, I take a look at Ellie's backpack and see mentions of Dina and Ellie's ex-girlfriend Kat are mentioned along with a few drawings. The big surprise Joel mentions turns out to be a museum. There's a big ass dinosaur out front, and of course we have to jump off its head and land in the water below. Ellie picks up a brochure and puts it in her backpack, and it's the same one we can find at Joel's house after he dies. Ellie's like a walking trivia machine in this section. You go to each exhibit and learn about each of the different dinosaurs that are in there. Ellie keeps putting an Indiana Jones hat on all the exhibits. I fucking love this part.
Oh, hello. Sorry, the dinosaurs are busy right now.
What are you doing?
Oh, wait. One of the dinosaurs is here.
That is a velociraptor.
Actually, it's a Deinonychus.
Pretty sure these are velociraptors. I mean, at least that's what they called them in this movie I saw.
Compsognathus. Whew, it's a big name for little guys.
Yeah, they'd swarm you.
Did you see that in a movie too?
Actually, yeah. But a different one. See, there's a sequel. Wasn't as good.
Tiny head. Joel, look!
That is a hat on a dinosaur.
It's called a hatasaur.
Is this gonna be a thing? Please don't let it be a thing.
The Dimetrodon was an apex predator.
What's an apex predator?
The most badass predator.
Huh. Pretty short for that.
Wait, were you talking about me?
Whatever floats your boat.
This does. Floats it all day. Oh, cool.
What you got there?
These superhero cards. Seems like they were popular.
I think Sarah was into those for a while. What was those little creature things? I forget.
Gallimimus's name means chicken mimic. Who names these?
Scientists.
Well, they're dumb. Come on.
Oh yeah, this was definitely worth the 3-day ride to get here.
Hey, Joel.
Ellie.
Don't you dare take it off. My birthday, my rules.
I see the appeal.
Told you.
I miss Joel. Why couldn't you have shown me this first, before you took him away? There's also a planetarium section where you learn about past space explorations. Sit in the Mars rover, wear helmets from whatever sort of space mission you want, and go inside a fucking re-entry capsule. Joel gives Ellie the final piece to her birthday surprise, being a recording of an actual rocket launch. Ellie closes her eyes and loses herself in her own imagination, imagining blasting into space for the first time. So wholesome. Ellie and Joel explore more of the museum. They get separated and already some shit don't look right, or sound right. There's some weird stuff written on the walls, and a rustling sound off in the distance. I was actually legit freaked out at this point. I didn't know if someone was hunting Ellie or what was going to happen. I actually turned off my flashlight, crouched, and would throw bottles off in random directions to throw anything that I thought was hunting me off my tail. Anyways, we don't have to worry for too long, since we see this dead guy who we can assume was the one who wrote all the shit on the walls. He seems to be a firefly who went crazy after he realized there was no hope for humanity after they fell apart. Also, here's a war. Alright, chill out, Timon. I guess that's what was causing all the noise. That's about it for this flashback. I actually decided to go to sleep at this point. Not gonna lie, this is and probably will be my favorite section in the whole game, even though it's a flashback section. I like the nice break of pace from all the killing and death, even if the flashback gimmick's a little played out in my opinion. But I'm glad we at least got to spend some time with Joel. This was everything I really wanted, to be honest. I also loved how Ellie and Joel's dynamic was just given a little bit of time to breathe. I still feel like this section should have come before Joel died though. But I guess the writers didn't want to have a tutorial section like Skyward Sword that lasts for about 10 hours. I'm not sure which method of storytelling I would have liked more, but I think I'm okay from Joel's death now. It was at least a good way for the game to pay homage to Joel's memory. I'm excited to see what the game has in store for me. So we wake up from one of the best dream sequences I've experienced in a game to go find Dina. I forgot to mention in the previous section that it seems whenever Ellie finds a guitar, you get an optional chance to pick it up and play it. And it's not just a section of QuickTime events either. You can actually play it using the analog sticks combined with L1 and R1 to change the chords while you use the PlayStation touchpad to strum. I loved this, since I always thought that the touchpad was an amazing addition to the PlayStation 4 controller, yet I've only seen it used in less than a handful of games to this day, and most of them only have it for a single use that doesn't serve much of a purpose. It's great to see a game that finally utilizes the full capabilities of the touchpad. You can even pick individual notes, even if my knowledge of guitars is limited. So I go to the projector room where Dina has repaired the radio, while recovering from morning sickness. She'd been putting in some mad work with the radio by documenting the codes they use to decipher their locations. Just then they hear some chatter over the radio about a lone gunman wreaking havoc, which Ellie and Dina assume is Tommy. Dina gives a rough estimate where the location might be, and they decide to head off. Before Dina takes a step outside the theater, she has a fake contraction. Apparently it's a thing that just happens during pregnancy, since I'm positive she can't be that far along to have real contractions yet. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt though. Ellie lets Dina stay behind while she goes off to rescue Tommy. I guess it's the best thing to do right now. Both having the prego come with her and having the prego stay back don't really sit well with me. At least she didn't drag the prego like halfway across enemy territory. I would just completely give up on the game after that. Dina feels bad she can't come, so she gives Ellie a good luck charm. Anyways, Ellie heads off to Hillcrest alone. I read her journal where it says something about letting her mask slip off. Okay, calm down, you edgy girl. Who you think you are, Zack Snyder? There's an awesome side story here that documents this guy named Boris. We see that he's a master at the bow and that his daughter loves him very much. In the next looting area, we find another note written to Boris by a woman named Yolanda. She writes that the Wolves found the roster list for all the Fedra members and will most likely be trying to hunt them down. Yolanda wants to flee, then come back when the heat dies down with a new name. She asks Boris and his daughter Sophie to look after her unspecified pet Alfie in the meantime. I like to pretend it's a cat. We then get another note by Yuli? I'm not quite sure. Sorry if I butchered the name. Strange name. Anyways, this person writes to Boris saying that the Wolves are doing the same controlling shit that Fedra was doing, but this time the Wolves want to relocate everyone to the stadium, which the neighborhood is not happy about. He begs Boris to help the community. God damn, I know we gotta catch up on lore in this place, but it's been 25 minutes of straight looting. Throw a patrol at me at least, or some clickers. Literally a moment later, I'm introduced to the most brutal aspect of the combat I've seen in this game so far, and that's the dog units. They patrol the area with their handlers, and if they pick up your scent, they'll follow it all the way back to you. There's something extra messed up about killing these dogs though. Remember when I said dogs are always used as emotional triggers for the audience? Through my own personal experience, I can say this is accurate. I remember whenever I showed a clip from American Psycho, there was this scene where the main character kills a homeless guy and his dog. Every time I showed the scene, no one bats an eye at the man getting stabbed, but God forbid anything happens to a dog. This of course makes sense. Dogs are seen as innocent since their loyalty is so high they just seem to mimic their owners. Anyways, but yeah, you can kill dogs in all sorts of sadistic ways. You can melee kill them, blow them up, light them on fire, or take them out with stealth kills. All of them make you feel absolutely terrible. And they make you listen to this terrible wincing of the dogs in pain through the entire time. Anyway, so skipping ahead to the next section, has you push a dumpster up an incline so you can quickly get to the roof. Groundbreaking stuff, Naughty Dog. We get another piece of what happens to Boris with another note from Yuli. It says the wolf killed Boris's daughter, Sophie, for spray painting over their banners with all the rules on them. Yuli feels responsible in some way, since they've been telling the community to stand up against the wolves. He goes on to say he shouldn't retaliate since it will only make things worse, especially when the community needs a leader and not another dictator. By the writing, it seems like Boris used to run things around here before Fedra took over. Having your only daughter killed is a situation I would never want to be put in. The next note we find is by the Brandmans, addressed to Yuli, stating that after Sophie's shooting, the Brandmans want to move their family to the Wolves Stadium. They ask Yuli to talk to Boris since he seems off, but to me that seems like how it would be if you lost a daughter. I find a garage with 5 infected packed into it. Kinda scared the crap out of me. After they're dealt with, there's a safe inside that requires a code, which I can't find the combination for, but fuck it, we'll do it live and just listen for the pins. There's a sidearm holster, which is a relief because I thought I missed it ages ago. Across the street is a bar with a shambler in it. There's a note in the back written by an unknown person going by the alias of X, addressed to Yuli. X claims he saw Boris execute a wolf patrol of at least 3 people. They may or may not have killed his daughter. It's not 100% clear. Anyways, X thinks the wolves will most likely retaliate for what Boris has done, so they might not have any choice but to rat him out to save themselves. The next section is just clearing out a load of infected, but we eventually make it to Boris's house. He left a note for Yolanda describing how he knew the neighborhood was going to turn against him for killing those wolf soldiers, an act he still thinks was justified, even though it's not necessarily clear if they're the ones who were responsible for his kid's death. He somehow knocked them all out by poisoning them and put them into the spored garage I cleared out earlier. Yuli woke up and bit him, but he managed to lock them all in with each other. Brutal. I got jumped going through this doorway, and I was actually shocked to see that it was Boris turned into an infected stalker. It was actually a pretty intense boss fight. That is, unless I didn't take a page from Indiana Jones and just shoot him. We get my favorite weapon from the last game, the bow. I like to think this section was Boris in some way testing Ellie to see if she is as revenge-filled as he is, to succeed where he failed and take down the wolves. Whew, I get goosebumps just thinking about that. In a way, I kind of wish I did just fight him in hand-to-hand combat, though. The next section is pretty intense as well. The wolves are all over the place, and there's a few dogs in this section that just adds to the tension. Probably the most significant difficulty spike I've experienced in a while. The game just got through explaining how all these things work, and then it gives you free reign to complete this part however you wish. Something I learned here that's infinitely fucked up is the best way to take down the dog units, which is to quietly kill their handler, and while the dog is confused and slowly realizing what happened, to then cap the dog as well. I still feel bad. Anyways, after a long action sequence, you bump into what the fuck? Jesse? Ellie must have cucked him so hard he's simping for both of them now. Ellie's probably like, oh yes, stage 3, the symphoning is in effect. But for real, I love Jesse. They realize that they're quite far into enemy territory, so they decide to kill these guys, jack their car, and Dukes of Hazzard their way out. This turns out to be a run and gun section straight out of the Uncharted handbook. You know the type. You don't have to worry about health or ammo while you survive a bunch of shit that should have killed you. And then at the very end, everybody's okay. It was kind of jarring, really. I've been playing the game so stealthily, and now we go loud for no other reason than we need a yeehaw section. I just wish they had an in-game explanation to show why this is so. Like, have Ellie find a gun with a shit ton of ammo in the center console or something. I mean, because even if I saved every shot, there's no way I have this much ammo. Anyways, we just managed to break away and cross the finish line. So we make it back to the theater, and Jesse and Dina start reconnecting, like Ellie isn't even there. Looks like Jesse's simping was so effective, she got Dina simping for him. Looks like the cucker has become the cuckold. Ellie then sulks off, where we find a flashback of Ellie and Tommy. I can't do another flashback sequence, I really can't. This better be good. So I start my gameplay with another flashback sequence. I really hope this isn't going to be a regular thing. So Tommy can tell something's off with Ellie, so he lets her pop off a few shots with his pimped out rifle at a group of migrating infected. Oh yeah, they mention the infected migrate from time to time due to the temperatures or something. It's not really explained.
Well, when the barometric pressure reaches a certain temperature, shit, I don't fucking know.
He teaches her about bullet drop and using sounds to lure out infected, which is cool. But I feel like this would have been better as a tutorial section at the beginning of the game. I mean, I just got through a very tough difficulty spike in the game where I more or less learned about using the sound of bullets to lure enemies. I have a strong feeling that something happened in the development process of this game, but I'll explain that in a later section, probably at the end. So through their dialogue, it seems Ellie has been more distant towards Joel since their last flashback. They make it to the ski lounge where Abby was saved by Joel and Tommy. So they meet Joel there playing Ellie's guitar and mentions she hasn't changed the strings yet. Tommy recommends they hit the music store in the town at the bottom of the ski lounge. I search the place before I leave and I find an issue of Savage Starlight on the table. Tommy says it's Joel's, and I'll touch on this in a minute. So we head off and see Shimmer without half of her head missing. Joel mentions how he was talking to Jessie, and he said she was good enough to go from group patrols to paired patrols. Once again, why weren't Tommy and Joel with the group when they went to go thin out the migrating infected horde at the beginning of the game? It doesn't matter how resourceful they are. Anyway, so the topic shifts to the comic book we found earlier. Joel and Ellie exchange some opinions on the story beats, and it's actually quite sad. Joel cares about Ellie so much that he's resorted to reading her favorite comic book just so he can try to reconnect with her. So they make it inside of a hotel, and Joel makes Ellie put on her spore mask just in case they run into someone, which Ellie reluctantly puts on. They mention the place has a lot of spores, so it couldn't have been the two teenagers that went missing last year. More on that later. So I alert the enemies because I am a noob, and they start pouring in. However, it's not as bad as it looks, since Daddy Joel is quick with that shotgun. Seriously, if every NPC acted like this, the game would be over a lot quicker. Which once again makes me wonder if this was meant to be earlier in the story, since Joel takes out most of them, and they aren't really much of a threat here. They decide to cut the quest for guitar strings short and just try to find a way out. We squeeze through a small narrow opening, but instead of hiding a loading screen, it's hiding a giant bloater which rips Ellie out of the wall and a boss battle happens. It's actually a cool battle. And the bloater is way more of a threat this time around. And it's not just because he's in a close quarters environment. He no longer just has 3 weak spots, but instead is a bullet sponge and can charge at you with little warning. Ellie's about to die in the same animation that Joel would die in the first game, but instead, Joel jumps in and hacks it the fuck up with a machete. A small gripe, but why do these spore clouds hurt Ellie? She's immune, and it's shown that she has no problem breathing them in. Anyways, on our way out, we find the 2 dead teenagers. They felt guilty because they were living in peace while the rest of the world suffered, so they left to try to help people. Yeah, I was an edgy and ungrateful teenager once too. You know what's a good way to help people? Protecting your friends, family, and community. Seriously, people would kill to get into Jackson. It's kind of the ideal way to live in a world like this. Anyways, Ellie questions the official story Joel laid out, and Joel is able to delay her inquiry by using his awesome southern twang.
Why did you pull me out of there while I was still unconscious?
When I saw that they were useless, I got us out of there.
How do you know they were useless? Maybe if you just would have given them more time, they could have figured something out.
There was no cure. I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different. But they ain't.
But just like a dark cloud on the horizon, it's only a matter of time before the storm catches up. We jump back to modern-day Seattle, where Ellie is recovering from that cuckolding and various other wounds. Dina helps Ellie out. She still doesn't think it's a good idea to tell Jesse that the baby is his, since the last man she was with seems to be him. It's like, girl, you're deep behind enemy territory. Every day could be your last. I think this is a good time to tell him. Anyways, since Dina's been stir crazy listening to the radio all day, she's actually been able to track down Nora, the one who pistol whipped Tommy, to a hospital. You can tell Ellie's revenge is having an effect on their relationship, but it doesn't really seem to be at a boiling point yet. I guess we'll keep a lookout while I check out this building's workbench. I doubt they'll...
You picked the wrong house, fool!
Looks like I found the deserters. Oh shit, there's 4 of them, and they caught me off guard. This is gonna be so tough. Oh yeah, they're dead too. You thought the game cares about tactics? So in the bounty note, there was 1 female who was Asian and 3 males who were black, white, and Hispanic. Also, the room which was locked and now is not unlocked has a note inside of it written by the Asian woman, which confirms that this is the group they were looking for. Anyways, we do a small puzzle where you move a dumpster to the top of a ramp to buy you some time to get this gate open. It's pretty basic. What's with this game and its hard on for dumpsters? We then encounter the stalker type infected proper. I actually forgot these guys were in the last game. They were so forgettable. They were only in like 3 parts of the last game and were pretty underused and underdeveloped. While they are a bit more fleshed out here, they're still pretty underused. What would be way better is if they take out massive chunks of health each time they grab you. That way they feel like they're just about to enter a clicker stage, because really they're just annoying every time they pop out. It is kind of cool that they won't show up on listening mode unless they move positions, and you can throw bottles to throw them off your location. Playing this section in grounded mode is how intense it should have been from the beginning. But like I said, to be fair, I like how they're used in this game more. At least they can actually fight back a little bit. And if you're fighting more than 1 at a time, it's actually pretty difficult. Also, look at this shot.
Triple kill.
By means of some bullshit, I fall through a window, find my way through this stream, suffer through their attempt to add a light platforming section, and get to the surface.
You are here, and the hospital's there.
I mean, according to this map, it's more of an inconvenience instead of cutting through between the buildings here, but sure. I'm sure there's nothing suspicious about this whistling coming from the forest.
That's bait.
Not a trap at all.
Oh my god.
Finally, we get our first introduction with the scars. Believe it or not, these guys actually scare the shit out of me. Just listen to this. They have their own language of whistles to communicate, so the enemy can't tell what they're saying. That's crazy. There's something truly scary about not knowing what your enemy is communicating that freaks me out. I legit had goosebumps sneaking through this section here. I didn't know what was going on. The enemy could spot me at any time, and it just sounded like another whistle to me. They also have this mechanic where if you get hit by an arrow, you start bleeding and losing health until you take it out. I always heard it was better to leave the arrow in so you don't bleed out or hurt yourself further until you can get medical attention. Whatever, it's a common trope in video games, so I'm not gonna harp on it for too long. I know some people don't like it, but I love sneaking past a group of enemies without alerting any of them. Maybe taking a few of them down in the process without them figuring it out. Something about that really gets my blood pumping, since I love to play on harder difficulties where direct combat isn't the smartest thing. So we get a dead body in this next section with a sad letter where they fell into the same damn trap Ellie did, except he's not gonna make it. He tells the next person who finds this note to please give his wife these pills so she can survive the pregnancy. Oh man, should have worn his plot armor.
is free.
Once again, kinda scared of these guys. So after a nail-biting escape, I find a bullshit locked door. I bet there's some dumbass puzzle to... This enemy, in concept, is awesome. I mean, look how he throws Ellie over objects. I just thought that was so cool. It felt like he was an actual enemy using the environment to his advantage. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna beat this guy. Well, in theory, this enemy is used well. In practice, not so much. The game designers didn't think to take away my guns in this section. This would be an easy fix. Have me walk through the first door here, and when I get to the second door, have the guy bust in and stun me. While I'm recovering on the floor, he grabs me by the backpack and throws me out the door, causing me to lose my backpack. And when he goes through the door, it locks behind him. On one hand, you can have an intense, intimate, and dynamic boss battle. On the other, you can cheese him right out of the gate. I'm pissed about this, because this is the first time we were introduced to this enemy, and I feel like it's done way better and worse in later parts of the story as well. So then we get this weak-ass attempt at doing a safe cracking puzzle. I mean, the code's literally written right there, so it's not even that hard. Even the first safe wasn't this easy to crack. We finally infiltrate the hospital Metal Gear Solid style by jumping out of the water and interrogating the first person we find as to Abby's location, who looks a lot like Rose Tico from Star Wars, I might add. Maybe it's just me. After giving up her homegirl Nora, she tries to stab Ellie, so Ellie returns the favor. She did not think that through, just like Rose Tico. I love how she's trying to stab Ellie, and in the middle of the struggle, Ellie realizes, oh shit, I can just stab her with my free hand. Okay, this next thing I cannot forgive the game for. Ellie loves video games and comics. Why didn't she pick up the PlayStation Vita? That shit is like gold in the apocalypse. Plus, it has Hotline Miami downloaded onto it? How many Vitas are you gonna find out in the world with a working battery and the banger Hotline Miami pre-downloaded onto it? Who wouldn't pick that up? So like always, I get spotted while sneaking in and have to go loud. Speaking of which, this weapon I got from that beefy boy is quite brutal. Sorry, Pooch. I sneak past them, and while crawling in the vents, we overhear Nora being interrogated by some wolf members. It seems like Nora was supposed to be looking after Abby in her cell, and she escaped. The wolf members are obviously suspicious, but they can't do shit until Isaac talks to her. We confront her, and she says this.
We could have killed you.
Maybe you should have. Maybe you should have stayed the fuck out of Jackson. Where's Abby?
You still hear his screams?
What?
I hear them every night. Yeah. Yeah, that little bitch got what he deserved.
Could you at least try to make these characters less killable? She throws a bunch of shit at Ellie. There's a short but fun chase scene before Ellie throws them both into a spore-infected room to throw the soldiers chasing them off her trail. Also, check out this next clip.
Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
That was by far the most invigorating escape I've done in a video game in quite some time. We corner Nora, and she's pretty much done for. Ellie gives her the option to tell her where Abby is, and she'll kill her quick, or slowly if she doesn't. She says she's not going to give up her sociopathic friend, more on that later. So Ellie lays the fuck into her. I know she looks like she's getting angry here, but to me she looks like she's just pooping. She goes back to the theater and gets patched up by Dina, since Jesse needs a break from simphing so hard. It's here that you really see how much of a toll this journey has taken on Ellie, both mentally and physically. This is a great scene, done even greater by the actresses. But before I ended my gameplay session, there was yet another flashback. Not gonna lie, I'm getting real fucking sick of the flashbacks here. Maybe this doesn't apply here, but there was a scene in GTA 4 I'll never forget, where Nico's telling a story from the war. The look on his face and how he tells the story conveys all we need to know about the war. It was brutal, and he's haunted by what he saw and what he had to do. I wish instead they were a bit lighter on the flashbacks. Not everything needs to be shown, you know? And if it does, make sure it comes first. Anyways, so it's a flashback a year after the previous flashback, where Ellie goes to the hospital where it all went down in the last game. She searches around for a little bit and finds a tape recorder that contradicts Joel's official narrative. Joel finds her, but she's not happy to see him. This time she just wants the truth about what happened. So Joel tells Ellie what happened, but leaves out pretty much all the ambiguity, like all the points I made at the beginning of the review. He doesn't mention about the guards knocking him out while he was performing CPR on a child that wasn't breathing, or that the vaccine wasn't a sure shot. I feel like the writers were trying to imply that they were certain they would create a vaccine from these notes here, but because we don't get a proper explanation, I can't confirm anything. I already went over this in the beginning of the video, but one thing I can't stress enough is even if they did make a vaccine, forget about manufacturing and distributing, there's no way they would just give it away for free. They could use it as a way to gain power by pledging allegiance to them. Anyways, she says she'll go back to Jackson, but that they're done. It's kind of weird, because they seem to be on such good terms the day he was killed. I mean, they were going to go watch his favorite action movie franchise that night. I guess we'll have to see later what changed. Hopefully not with another fucking flashback. They do, though. So it jumps back to modern day, and it's officially day 3 of Ellie's rampage. Ellie talks to Jesse for a bit. He knows something is up with Dina since she keeps throwing up all the time. He correctly guesses Dina was pregnant and that it's his kid. He also convinces Ellie to get Dina some real care and take her back to Jackson. From what she says here, it seems like she's implying that she doesn't even care about killing Abby, she just wants to get back with Dina. But they need to find Tommy first. Jesse says he wants to get the gang back together too. So if Tommy is going to be getting the same information that they are, then he's going to head to the aquarium that Nora pointed out for us, since he'll probably find the same information they did. I know Dina is okay with them going off, but I really don't feel good about leaving a prego chick by herself in a world like this. So far, it's been okay. Like always, I love the combat sections. I just think the story could use a little bit of help at some points. So on our way to get Tommy, Jesse and Ellie start talking about Joel and why he died. But other than that, not much happens. Besides a few combat encounters.
Joel liked you a lot too, you know. He used to think I had a crush on you.
Really?
I mean, you're handsome and whatever, but I'm not into your type.
What, Asians?
Yeah, that's obviously what I meant.
That was the funniest dialogue I think I've heard the whole game. The wolves in this area are talking about getting on a boat, so we'll see if that has anything to do with the aquarium or not. The Gray and Jewel subplot seemingly concludes. There's a note I find next to a bunch of stalkers that says some dude was out on patrol when he saw Gray and got ambushed trying to get his attention. We then get another note from Gray addressed to Jules. He has to leave her behind, but he still wants her to come with him. And that's about it. So there's something here I want to say about the gameplay loop. It goes something like this: looting, platforming, and combat sections. That's about it. I didn't notice it until just right now. I'm writing the script and it's been about an hour of gameplay and nothing's happened. To be fair, I don't really notice it when I'm playing. I actually kind of like the gameplay loop. But when I have to edit the important bits, there really isn't much going on for a while. Anyways, so they decide to steal a boat since the rest of the way is flooded. They overhear some wolves talking about a sniper that's been spotted, and Jesse wants to go there because it's most likely Tommy. But Ellie wants to keep heading to the aquarium since Tommy will be gone before they can get there. Jesse sees this for the hoe-ass move that it actually is, and leaves Ellie to go save his boy Tommy. We kill all the wolves, steal the boat, do some platforming and some looting. We do get another bloater boss fight. It It was pretty fun, but to be honest, there really isn't much that happens in this next bit either. People to say the game has interesting puzzles. To that, I show you this. We come to an impasse on the boat. What's wrong? The chain is caught in a pipe, so we need to free it. That's when we fall into the bloater. We kill it, and then we get the pipe out. Maybe the boss fight is a little fun to play through, but to play through this again would be tedious as hell. We crash the boat into the sea and swim the rest of the way. I wonder what this reminds me of. Anyways, once we get to the aquarium, it takes me about 15 minutes to figure out where the hell to go. I do the classic crawl into a rusty old vent, fall out because it's rusty and old, only to alert a dog and have to kill it. For everyone's sanity, I'm not going to show that scene. But what is it with this game and killing dogs? It's coming off as a little much. We find an operating table. It looks like it's been used recently, which will be explained later. We then find two of the people who killed Joel, Mel and Owen. They talk very vaguely about an island, Abby, and a boat. Sounds like something that'll be explained later, obviously. Ellie then holds both of them up and, well, just watch this breakdown. Okay, and now it's time to break down that scene, where we go play by play and show you the glorious and excruciatingly cringy moments with your hosts, Tom and Bob. Now, to be fair, Tom, Ellie starts off strong, being very demanding and threatening with Mel. Yeah, Tom, the upgraded pistol and the wet complexion from swimming in the dirty water gives off a hint smell of fish crossed with weak old ass. Super intimidating. That's right, Bob. And we can see Mel feels the gravitational pull of Ellie's big clit energy, so much that she is really considering giving up Abby's location. I'm gonna have to fault Ellie for that one right there, Tom. Not telling Owen to back the fuck up might bite her in the butt later. Not only is he in clear sight of the map, making the interrogation tactic all but ineffective, but he can easily make a move for her gun when she's distracted. Major foul right there, Bob. And that's why Owen here pulls some slick shit. Should have told them to back the fuck up like you said, Bob. Thank you for the compliment, Tom. Oh, and as you can see, because of Ellie's lapse in judgment, she has no choice but to cap Owen in the lung. A slow death is pretty much certain at this point. You're right about that, Bob. Check it out right here. Mel goes in for a melee backstab. Now, while her determination was in the right place, her form and timing was very sloppy, and she pays for it. Looks like Ellie's gonna have a hard time hearing Owen with all that blood coming out of his mouth, Tom. Right you are, Bob. I gotta admit, a shameful display all around. Hope Ellie can come to terms with killing a prego. And I'm not talking about the pasta sauce, or she's gonna be out for the count. I mean, it's not like Mel was approved for combat duty or anything. I was so pissed after this part. Like, why did any of this happen? Nothing about this makes any sense. Why would Ellie let Owen get that close? He can clearly see the map. It's at this point, I noticed something. It's not that the actual events themselves are bad. It's how we get there that's pissing me off. Like that Abby finds Joel without doing any recon. And Joel happens to be on an extremely dangerous mission, clearing out a migrating horde of infected, and not in a group patrol even though we know it's a thing. Or how Jesse finds Dina and Ellie in the middle of a blizzard. And now this. Or how Ellie has the fucking drop on Abby and doesn't take it. And especially for that last one. In gun safety class, you'll learn if you come into a hostage situation and you're armed, but they haven't seen you, the best course of action is to shoot them. They could kill someone before you even have a moment to react. Anyways, Tom and Jesse find Ellie and take her back to the safe house. Also, why is Tommy wearing the same shit as Joel? That's kind of weird. I mean, I know why. It's because Ellie hears Joel's voice in her head for a second. And I actually thought they were going to be doing the whole Joel's ghost or hallucination thing here. And if you think that that's setting up for something in the future, it doesn't. Ellie wakes up next to a sleeping Dina. Without waking her, she slips out of the room and talks to Tommy and Jesse. They discuss the best ways to get back to Jackson, but Ellie is slightly peeved she didn't get to avenge Joel, but instead killed a bunch of people who may or may not have had much to do with it. Also, Dina Prego, so, that's a big part of it. Kind of wanted to see Tommy's reaction to that, to be completely honest. I would have liked to see him grapple with that moral conundrum. I mean, he came all the way out here too. You think he would at least suggest that they go back home while he finishes things, or run off without telling anyone. He's real good at doing that. So Jesse and Ellie hear some commotion coming from the next room that Tommy just went into, and... Why does this game kill everything good going for it? So Abby finds them and demands Ellie give herself up, which she does, but Abby looks like she's gonna cap her ass anyways. Probably because she killed all of her friends. How the hell did she find out where they were? All will be revealed in time. So this section was really slow and stupid. Not just all the dumb stuff that happened, but the gameplay wasn't even really all that fun. Like, yeah, we got to play around with some water mixed with the combat, and another bloater fight. But as always, the puzzles and platforming was really lackluster. So that was a pretty intense section. Let's see how it ends.
You killed my friends. We let you both live. And you wasted it. Dad? Dad?
What? No. This can't be. Another damn flashback? Why do you hate us, Naughty Dog? It's getting very hard to stay unbiased. So we get another flashback sequence. But this time, it's Abby 4 years ago. I'm assuming she's like 16 or 18 here. Anyways, she's wandering in the middle of the forest looking for her dad until we come across this coin. It is probably going to piss off some coin enthusiasts, like it did me, because Abby finds a state coin from Virginia that's from 1978. The custom state quarters program didn't get introduced until 1999. Before then, they all just had eagles on the back. There's 50 of these coins you can find in the game, and I assume it's so that you can find all 50 states. And this one is maybe the only one that isn't accurate. A meaningless gripe to most people, but it just kinda irks me for some reason. Anyways, we find Abby's dad. He sneaked off from a location, and Abby is left to go find him. From what location? You'll see. Anyways, we look around for a bit and find a placenta just chilling on the ground. We follow the tracks and see a zebra caught in barbed wire. Owen pops in like Kramer from Seinfeld and helps to free her. Owen then tells Abby's dad, who the subtitles name him as Jerry, that a girl with an old bite mark on her arm showed up. The dad acts surprised, but he must have known why he was there by now. Owen even says Marlene keeps talking about her. Besides, Joel's journey took about a year. You tell me she didn't even mention this once? In the next scene, Marlene and Jerry are discussing what to do with Ellie.
And you're okay with killing her? No, I'm okay with developing a vaccine that'll help save millions of lives. Look, everything that we've been fighting for, all the sacrifices, all of the horrific... all of that is justified with this one act.
Might be justified with this one act. I get it. They had a chance and they took it. Just like Joel saw a chance with his supplies on the table and being escorted out by one guard. The Fireflies didn't want to give Ellie the choice because they didn't want to take the chance of honoring that request if she said no. Then they would be the real monsters by forcing a little girl to die for the rest of humanity. Ambiguity aside, they made one mistake, letting Joel live.
If it was me, I'd want you to do the surgery.
Easy for you to say, Abby. You gave consent. We see a change of perspective with Abby, going down the same path Joel did to find her dad dead. Some people say this is supposed to show Ellie and Abby aren't so different, but really we don't know much about these people. We spent a whole game with Ellie and Joel. and we spent maybe 12 minutes with her dad. Nothing about my opinion has changed about this guy. If anything, it shows he didn't know it was gonna work.
Are you asking me? Or are you telling me this is how it's gonna be?
I am begging you to buy in.
It then shows Joel's death scene, but from Abby's point of view. It's getting very hard to see these people as misunderstood. Also, who the fuck is this guy? Is he a Firefly? Because I don't think they ever say anything about his backstory, but why the hell is he so pissed off at Joel that he spits on his fucking corpse? I also hate to say it, but this loogie coughing son of a bitch is right. They should have killed the witnesses. Dead men tell no tales. So the next title card tells us we're back at the first day of Seattle, but now from Abby's perspective. I like this. I like perspective changes in narrative time travel in video games, movies, and TV shows. I just wish they didn't wait until the climax of Ellie's story to do it. And seeing how the writing has been, I'm not holding my breath to see if they do this right.
Hey, sir.
Ah, Abby.
How you feeling?
Fantastic. Keep him safe.
For you, I will.
You know, it would be such a shame to break your promise to this old man. So it seems like Abby and Mel have been distant to each other since Jackson. Since Mel isn't into the whole torture an old man while he's defenseless sort of thing.
I actually cleared you for active duty. Barely. You could probably get a stay if you ask.
I'd rather not sit around if I don't have to.
Bitch, you look like you smuggling a turkey. She looks like she's about to pop any minute. Worst of all, she's putting her baby in danger by just going out on the front lines. I know pregnancy hits every woman differently, but she has to at least be 4 months along. Dina wasn't even showing yet, and she collapsed in the middle of a dangerous situation. So much is wrong with this right now.
Oh, hey there, Bear.
Bear. Why does that name sound so familiar?
Something, boy. Get him! Here!
Oh, yeah. That's Bear. So we go to the armory and finally get a fucking semi-automatic. Kinda strange Abby gets a semi-automatic, while Ellie still has a bolt action. After kicking Manny's ass in the gun range, we saddle up. I mean, hop in the back of a truck.
Alice gets shotgun.
Mel's pregnant.
She could use a fresh air. Give you two a chance to talk.
Real subtle, right?
She's pregnant, you fucking dick. You really gonna let her ride in the back with that baby bouncing around? Like a grunt? I know you're trying to get them to talk, but there's a place and a time. A place and a fucking time.
Do you want me to get you something from the pharmacy?
Nah, I'm good.
It's not a big deal.
No, it's fine. I'm just gonna wear myself out. I've been picking up a few.
What is it with games and their passenger driving sequences? It wasn't cool when they did it in Metal Gear Solid 5, even though I fucking love that game, and it's not cool here. I much would have rather just enjoyed a cutscene.
No, it's fine. I'm just gonna wear myself out. I've been picking up a few extra assignments.
You and doing?
What do you mean?
Wow, that's the most passive-aggressive way I've ever seen a woman ask if another woman is fucking her man.
I wouldn't read too much into it.
Oh, shit! Ambush!
Hang on!
I'm waiting for us.
Take him up!
Good thing Mel was clear for active duty. I'm sure none of that will affect the baby in any way. So we make our way into the warehouse, and we get a chance to play around with the pipe bomb mechanics. It's pretty fun. I take this time to look over the upgrade tree. After playing video games for such a long time, I've coined a phrase. You can tell a lot about a game's gameplay by its upgrade tree. This applies to this game now more than ever. While Ellie's upgrades mostly enhance stealth, Abby's is mostly geared towards outright full frontal combat. Right out of the bat, if you upgrade the first tree fully, you'll get a 50% upgrade to your health. That's huge! After we get to learn a bit more about the Scars and WLF, there seems to have been a truce between the two factions that ended in some Scar kids attacking some WLF members, and WLF retaliated, and now the war's back on. So we make our way onto this boat repair place or something, and there's a rope puzzle we have to do here. It's not really worth mentioning. The only puzzle worth mentioning is this one, where you have to lay 2 ladders on a boat to get across. They did this in the first game like a lot, but this is the first time they've actually had this mechanic in this particular game. It actually took me a while to figure this one out, because I didn't think they would ever come back to this mechanic.
I guess I was shook by Jackson, too. You don't think Joel deserved what he got?
I think he deserved worse. I just wish I didn't take part in it.
Well, that's a little hypocritical. Although for someone who doesn't take medical leave that far into pregnancy, I'd say it's perfectly in line with her contradictory nature of her character. I'll stop ragging on her because of that, because I feel myself getting a little redundant at this point. So one thing I forgot to mention earlier is Abby has vertigo. When you look down from high heights, she gets all scared, and, that's about it. There's a safe cracking sequence that at least makes you stop and think a little bit. I forgot the code though, so I just decided to open it by listening to the pins. We get through another combat sequence, and I see that Abby chokes people out, so I'm not really sure if she's actually killing these people, but in real life, the second blood returns to your brain, consciousness is restored. So this really wouldn't happen. This isn't so much of a gripe in the game, but sort of a classic video game trope, so I'm not going to really take points off for that. We hold up a gas station, and just as we're about to biff it, a shit ton of troops come in to our rescue. We drop Mel off because she got slightly hurt and is a fucking liability. Manny mentions he doesn't trust the new recruits, which is interesting. They probably used to be Fedra members or Hillside members. The new recruits beg Manny to give them some information, since they've been at the forward operating base for 3 days, and they know some shit's about to go down.
There's some shit going down right now.
The forward operating base is actually pretty cool. It's the classic well-done world building we saw in the first part of the game. They have an armory, communications and statistics center, and a dog holding center. I looked at the names of these dogs, and some of them I actually recognize from combat. Not gonna lie, most of the dogs I try to kill silently or as quickly as I can to avoid further suffering. Not only that, but there's a lot of people I recognize from the Ellie section of the game. I know it's meant to make you feel bad, but I just think it's great attention to detail. I love this kind of stuff. So we meet Mel and Nora in the medical tent. We leave Mel to see the carnage Ellie, Dina, Tommy, and random Scars members have been doing. It's quite a lot. I bet most of them are from Ellie and Tommy. And then, oh my god, we see the most saddest scene in the game.
Holy shit. It's Danny.
Wait, have we met this guy before? There was a Danny depicted in the story of Ish back in the first game, but I bet they aren't the same people. Anyways, so Isaac does sound a little cool here. He stayed with Danny until he passed away. Nora tried to ask what he said to him, but unlike Fred Durst, he don't want to get caught up in the he said, she said bullshit. Abby is a little worried because they mentioned earlier that Owen was with Danny, so she's obviously scared why his body hasn't come back yet, or why he's not back at the forward operating base. They head into the apartments, and it's just as scary as I'd imagined. So up until this point, I've heard murmurs about this place from random Wolf members. It's a torture castle of pain and suffering.
After our morning, I wouldn't mind a few minutes with these guys.
Really doing a good job at making her likable, Naughty Dog. So we get introduced to the leader of WLF himself, Isaac. He is just as scary as I pictured him.
Don't let him fall asleep.
Yes, sir.
Manny comments on the base being packed. Isaac says it's only going to get more packed as the days go on. And when pressed on it, Isaac says the Scars are extremely aggressive and have been dwindling their numbers, but doesn't want to try another truths since both of their factions are hotheads and it'll only be a matter of time before someone breaks it. So Isaac comes up with a big brain attack for massive damage. He wants them to attack the island that the Scars are all located on, with all of their soldiers in 3 days' time, when there will be a giant storm that will blow through and mask their approach. It's a good idea, in theory, and it seems like he's kept the amount of people who know about this to a minimum as to avoid an informant passing info to the Scars. Very smart. This explains why the grunts were so confused earlier. Although, upon further examination, the plan isn't that good. I mean, attacking with everyone is a good idea, but you leave all your other bases wide open. He also wants Abby and Manny to lead the first wave of soldiers into the assault. Sounds like he's going to be sending them into a meat grinder if you ask me. But knowing Abby's luck, I'm sure she'll be fine. Abby tries some slick shit by asking, but not really asking where Owen is at. Isaac sees through this, and we will learn why no one knows anything. Danny told Isaac with his last breath that Owen shot him to protect his Scar. Abby wants to look for him, but Daddy Isaac says no. But Abby don't listen, and wants to go after him anyways, and has a good idea where he is. Wait, no, that's not right. That's not right. We're already in a flash. We're already in a flashback. Are you telling me there's a flashback inside of a flashback? Why, Naughty Dog? Why? Why do you do this? I've given up. So, it's a flashback inside of another flashback about a year after her dad died. I'm gonna be completely honest, not much happens here. It's mostly character building between Owen and Abby. I will say Owen is a lot funnier than I thought he was. Abby seems to be about the same humor level as Ellie, or maybe a bit less. The part that saves this flashback for me is the side story about a man and his kids. He's a nice guy, but he's a pacifist, and he stood there while his wife was murdered. The oldest child doesn't think that's a good example to set for the younger child, so he ran away to join the Scars. Father realizes his mistakes, so he leaves a boat at the makeshift pier and instructs them to take it and leave for a better life if they come back and he's dead. The saddest part is you can find the dad dead and alone in his favorite chair in his favorite room looking at the city. It just made me think that this is probably the fate of most pacifists in a world like this. But at least he stuck by his principles. Great piece of storytelling there, Naughty Dog. Anyways, Owen takes Abby to a nice little spot to sext her up. But she's so obsessed with Joel she can't even get the D. Owen, now in the final stages of little dick energy, needs to rest, so Abby leaves without him. This did make me feel a little bad for Owen. I always thought he was kind of a stuck-up asshole, but with this perspective, it shows that he's just one of those happy-go-lucky types that you need on your crew to lighten the mood. Can it be? Has Naughty Dog finally gotten me to care about one of the new antagonist characters? I kind of feel bad Ellie had to kill him, even if he had a terrible technique to snatch the gun away, and that none of those events should have happened in the first place. So, Abby's section has gotten off to a little bit of a rocky start. The only real character I care about and wanted to see more of was Isaac and Owen. But it just started, so we'll see what happens. Can't be that bad. So we start back in the evening of the first day, right where we left off. Manny is helping Abby to a certain point, and then he'll cover her ass for as long as he can so that Isaac doesn't find out.
Alice gets job done.
Mel's pregnant.
She could use the fresh air.
Still salty he made Mel ride in the back though, just saying. So there's not much to this next section. Its loot, notes, and combat gameplay loop is fun to play through, but not really fun to talk about. The only real thing of importance is we learn through a note that scars view the infected as demons that were once human, but have been corrupted. It's kind of cool to see their customs and the way they see life for a change instead of the bloodthirsty savages that we see. So the next important thing that happens is Abby gets tackled by this big bitch. So I'm just going to call her Helga. Because they kind of look like a Helga, you know? Helga make you go to sleep now. Helga only have one ear now. I take more from you now. So Abby gets captured here. And just see how this happens. I mean, I guess that swing had a little bit of mustard on it. But with everything she's gone through, I would have thought it would take a little bit more than a tap on the head with the wood part of a hammer to knock her out. Anyways, so we're blessed ever so graciously with another flashback. God damn it, enough! This one is literally from 4 months ago. Okay, so in this flashback, she meets Owen at the aquarium and chills for a little bit, talking and shooting some targets with a toy bow and arrow. Like, come on, this one had tutorial section written all over it. I know I say that almost every time there's a flashback, but it really pisses me off when the game does this. So in their conversation, they talk about hearing a rumor of a Firefly class reunion in Santa Barbara or something like that. Why is this important? No particular reason. Anyways, so Abby tells Owen she got a lead on Joel's location, and she's taking all their friends with her. Owen doesn't seem nearly as enthused as Abby, and then that's it. That's all the scene was really accomplishing. Sorry, I just hate flashbacks. Abby then wakes up being dragged into a forest of literal death. Right as it looks like the Scars are going to do some home renovations with Abby's entrails, they are so rudely interrupted by an unwelcome house guest by the name of Yara. Before they interrogate her, she spits in their face and gets her wings clipped. And by wings clipped, I mean they smash the fuck out of her arm. Gotta interject here, but seeing Yara later in the story, she seems to be a more soft-spoken person in general. It seems like she would have wanted to talk her way out of this before resorting to such an aggressive move. So they're about to give her a matching set of smashed appendages when they are so rudely interrupted again by this guy who decides to get a face piercing. And this guy who gets a sick gauge in his head. Whoa, mind the upholstery, you guys. Yara is about to learn the consequences of bringing a hammer and a broken arm to a gunfight, but Abby really needs a spotter, so she grabbed the nearest attendant, while Yara makes sure not to miss arm day again. We are then properly introduced to Lev and Yara, two Scars who seem to be on the run for unknown reasons at the moment. There is some slight back and forth as to if they should free Abby, who right now looks like a fish out of water. Yara decides they could use the extra hands, and they free her. Damn, Abby must never miss neck day to survive for that long. Their introductions to one another are cut short, since the infected seem to have heard all the commotion and want a midnight snack. And so, their fragile alliance is born. You then get to defend them with temporary infinite hammer durability. This whole section is done really well, actually. Even though the cutscene was one of the trailers for the game, it was super intense, and the following section is even more crazy as you literally can't see shit and have to follow Yara. After a bit of running, we meet Helga again, and she wants to pay Abby back for that hole in her ear. To be honest, this fight is very uneventful. This fight should have been the first time you encounter this type of enemy. She's got all of Abby's weapons on her back, so I need to use my fist. Also, I think there should have been more interactive elements to this fight, like maybe she throws you through a door or something, and you have to continue the fight in another room. I'm not really sure why Lev doesn't use his bow here to help her out, by the way. But yeah, the last Helga fight with Ellie was awesome. He threw me over tables and pursued me no matter how far I strayed from him. I just wish they would have combined the best aspects of both of these fights. So after Helga is dealt with, we dip into a car repair garage. Lev and Yara refuse to touch anything because they see it as from the old world. This raises my curiosity, and I really want to learn more about the Scars. Like, their culture is so stoic, they don't even know what puns are. Also, it turns out Scars aren't called Scars. They call themselves Seraphites. but that's too hard to type into the script multiple times, so I'll just be calling them scars. We also get a survival guide that gives us explosive rounds for the hunting pistol, which is pretty cool. We help them to get over the door so they can unlock it for us, which leads to a combat sequence, you know the drill. This time it's actually pretty cool. I like how small yet open this area is, and how you have to dip into other rooms to avoid the infected. So I get out of this death trap, and Yara's too weak to walk, so we carry her to one of those portable construction foreman trailers. It's the best description I can think of. Abby sets Yara's bones back and bids them farewell. We run into this ship along the way, and it has an interesting story to tell. We can tell some shit went down by going to the infirmary and seeing everybody down here with a crossbolt in their foreheads. Between the random notes and the captain's log, we can piece together that the boat was a ferry, but after 2 passengers who they picked up turned out to be infected, the whole boat gets paranoid, and one person in general goes into the infirmary and kills everyone just to be sure. The captain confronted the guilty party and got a bolt in the gut for his troubles. After exchanging fatal blows, he steers the ship to dry land to let the other passengers out. The last thing he heard before he died was the infected walking around the outside of his cabin, wondering if maybe they were right to kill everyone in the infirmary. Kind of a cool story. Abby makes it back to the aquarium and finds Owen in a makeshift pier on a boat. He finally gives some context to Danny's death. He tells Abby they were clearing out an area of scars, and there was an old man Scar who had his weapon next to him, but refused to even attempt to pick it up. This act of accepting his death peacefully, instead of through violence like most Scars, sparked some compassion and understanding in Owen, something his partner Danny didn't share. Danny then pulled a gun out on Owen for some reason, instead of just capping the old man himself. So Owen gets in a fight with Danny and accidentally shoots him. Like I said, that's kind of fucked, but how it happened doesn't really make much sense. Like, Danny just could have capped him and there wouldn't have been an issue. Like, I don't get it. Why did he point his gun at Owen? That doesn't really make any sense. Like, if you're literally that gung-ho about it, just cap the dude yourself. It actually maybe would have made Owen even look more sympathetic if he was stopping Danny from killing the old man. So Abby says she's going to vouch for him, so he won't get that bad of a punishment when they make it back to Isaac. But Owen's tired of killing for a cause he doesn't believe in, and wants to follow the rumor of the Fireflies being in Santa Barbara he got all those months back. Abby thinks it's stupid, but Owen actually uses her own logic against her.
Why are you in such a good mood?
Am I?
Abby, when the moon comes
I
out...
found Joel's brother. He's at a settlement out in Wyoming.
How do you know that?
The Fireflies who served with him got picked up at the wall.
I thought he quit like a decade ago. Have these guys heard from him since?
It's a lead. I gotta see it through.
I'm going to Santa Barbara.
To chase a rumor?
I've heard it more than once.
The Fireflies aren't regrouping. They're gone.
It's a lead. I gotta see it through.
Now that right there is how you tie a flashback back to the current scene. Man, Owen has really grown on me. He even stands up to Abby when she tells him to grow up. He correctly points out the hypocrisy here, saying that he supported her when she wanted to brutally murder a guy, but he can't follow a rumor, although he's still an ass for abandoning Mel and his unborn child to grow up as a wolf member, or at least whatever is left of them after the upcoming attack. But all in all, Owen's actually kind of... Why does this game have to consistently destroy the one good thing it has going for it? Just look at my initial reaction to this. I felt nothing. I didn't feel pissed that he did it. I wasn't sad for Mel or happy for Abby. It felt like getting hit by the world's strongest hammer made out of dust. I mean, look at this guy. He doesn't even look her in the eye as he bangs his childhood best friend. Anyways, Abby has a flashback where she's back at the hospital, but instead of seeing her dead dad, she sees Lev and Yara hung up and disemboweled. She wakes up cuddled in Owen's arms, the rope burns on her neck being a glimpse into the fate of Lev and Yara. Also, Owen got some sick-ass burns on his back. I wish we would have gotten that story. Just not another fucking flashback, please, just explain it. Man, I don't even know what to think about this game anymore. Right when the game does some actually good character building, it shoots itself in the foot by making that character do something terrible. I get it, that's how humans are. But to show us that, and still know that these are the guys that killed Joel so brutally, and the only person who's actually affected by it was Mel, I don't know, it's just a bit odd. But let's see where the story takes us. Just a quick little edit. I read somewhere that the sex scene looks like two dudes. I never thought about that before, but now I'm stuck with it. So it's the second day now, and Abby's retracing her steps from last night, presumably to rescue Lev and Yara. I pull some MLG moves and sneak right past these guys to meet them, who aren't doing so hot. Literally. Abby takes them back to the aquarium, where Owen, Mel, and the dog, which I forgot to mention up until now, whose name is Alice, almost kills them. Mel takes a look at Yara and says she has compartment syndrome. I'm not a doctor, but the short end of it is that her arm needs to be amputated, since they don't have access to modern day technology. Mel mentions they need supplies for the amputation, and the closest hospital is a few hours away, which they don't have the time for. Lev mentions that the Scars have built structures very high up that connect the skyscrapers together and could cut the time it takes to get there by hours. And they only have small groups patrolling the area, giving them a greater chance to avoid detection. So they say their goodbyes and head out.
Look, she just showed up.
Okay.
I don't think she knows about last night.
I don't care about last night.
And neither do I.
You know our dogs can play cards like that?
I'm 13, not 8.
You're the size of an 8-year-old.
Do other people think you're funny?
No.
Okay, that was the funniest thing I've heard the whole game. Abby gives Lev a brief overview of compartment syndrome, showing that her father did teach her a lot about medicine. Okay, I'm just going to say something real quick about Abby. She keeps gripping in pain at her shoulder. I'm not sure if they were going to address this, but I don't think they ever will. I don't know, it was just something that really bugged me, that they never really addressed. There's a side story where two nerd dudes live across from a mother and daughter, and they exchange gifts and become friendly with one another. But one of the nerds gets shot by some Scars, and we can assume that the other dude shot himself because his body is in their room, with the two ladies' fate being unknown. They did say that whatever faction reaches them first, they're just going to surrender and turn themselves in, but I'm gonna assume that didn't turn out very well. So Lev and Abby strike up some combos. One notable topic was why are Lev and Yara being hunted by the Scars? Lev claims it's because he shaved his head, and it's forbidden. It actually took me till about day 3 to figure this out, but it's because Lev is actually trans. She was born a female but transitioned to male, and shaved her head in protest of the gender laws in their culture. Little did he realize, they aren't really open to that line of thought. You can even hear the Scars that ambush you yell out Lev's former name.
It's Lily!
I guess I never really noticed how all the male Scars have their heads shaved. The other conversation I found very interesting is it turns out Lev and Yara are still followers of the Scars' religion, even though that they're essentially being excommunicated. The explanation is that the leader of the Scars' writing was a very peaceful person, and the group only got violent after she died and the elders took over. This is interesting. I would have loved it if you could read bits and pieces off of this woman's Bible, off of dead Scar members, or if you got some first-hand accounts of how things changed under the Elders' leadership.
Now watch this drive.
So Abby and Lev manage to reach the bridge that connects the high-rise buildings together. And I gotta say, this looks way more time-consuming than I thought it was gonna be. Like, it seems it would just be easier to walk there even through enemy territory and a bunch of shit in your way. So through the strength of the Prophet, Abby manages to make it across the bridge, but slips on some bird shit, no I'm not joking, causing her and Lev to fall into the glass ceiling below into a pool. I'd say this is coincidental, but compared to everything else that's happened in the story so far, this is actually pretty tame. I mean, it's showing that the bird poop actually nullifies plot armor. It makes perfect sense. This body, though, does have an interesting note from a dead Fedra member who curses the organization for giving them faulty detonators and causing them to fail their mission of detonating the whole skyscraper to get rid of the infected. Looks like someone at Fedra wanted to question the official narrative and test the whole steel beams theory once and for all. So they get low enough to the point where they reach a nest of infected, but Lev doesn't have a mask, so Abby has to go get him one. I really don't like this section. It just feels like the game is wasting time until something interesting happens.
Looks good.
I'm not so sure about that one, Abby. It's been sitting on top of that guy's face for such a long time, he's decomposed into a fucking skeleton. Even if the smell alone doesn't make Lev throw up in the mask, the thing has been sitting unprotected in spores for, let's be generous, and say 2 months. Even though it seems like this happened a long time ago since the fall of Fedra. I doubt that mask looks good. Once again, this is not too big of a deal, but why do this? The writers could have just had them find a mask on this dead guy, where Lev found a flashlight. I counted the time and it literally took me 5 minutes to find the mask and make it back. They did not need to do this. Come on, stop wasting time. Could you really not find anything interesting for them to do in this section? Once again, it's a nitpick, but a time-wasting nitpick nonetheless. I will say though, I did like the stalkers in this section. They're all calcified to the wall until you walk across and they'll burst out and scare the shit out of you. That was actually scary the first 2 or 3 times, but after that they're quite easy to spot.
Is it true that Isaac took down the old guard? Fedra, yeah. I hear he tortures people. Let's not talk about this now. Okay.
2 seconds later.
Have you ever tortured people?
Damn right you ain't gonna answer that. So I actually thought this next section was pretty fun. My heart was racing as I frantically hit and run these infected until I found the exit, just barely escaping a bloater. So we escape the death trap, and we actually get some good character building with Lev here, when he answers Abby's question more or less asking if he regrets transitioning to a man. Lev says he only regrets his family getting involved. That's a good answer. Lev's starting to grow on me too right now. Wait a minute. I'm gonna take a look at my notes here. Joel, male, pretty cool, then gets killed. Jesse, male, pretty cool, then gets killed. Owen, male, pretty cool, cheats on baby mama, then dies. Lev, man, just like the rest. Please, Naughty Dog. Please, I know what you're thinking. You want to be cool and edgy and be taken seriously. I get it. I do too. But please don't sacrifice good writing to do it, please. So we make it to the hospital and Abby tells Lev to stay behind since he's got literal scars on his fucking face. This is actually pretty cool. You get to see the hospital before Ellie carves a path of destruction right through it. You get to jiggle the locked door that Ellie comes through, talk to the girl that Abby stabs in the neck, and see Bear before I brutalized him. Ugh, sorry once again, dude. Didn't know you'd be so important. I gave you a quick death, though. Just really messy. Something I just realized is Nick is playing with the Vita at day 1. So did he die and then this chick snatched it off his body or something? So these dudes bust in here and inform her that she's been AWOL since yesterday, placing her under arrest and transporting her to Isaac when they have the cargo room. I love how they took no chances here and they brought 3 guys, 2 of them with machine guns trained on her. And then they lose all that progress by leaving her handcuffed to an elevator with no guard. But I guess it's not like she has any friends that could let her out. So then Nora shows up, and since it's Salt Lake Crew for life, Nora lets her out. She tells Abby there isn't any medical supplies left except for maybe in the lower levels. But it's extremely dangerous, since this hospital was rumored to have treated patient 0 to the infection, which is a pretty cool premise. I'm actually scared to go down there.
God, I feel so bad for Mel. Yeah. Me too.
Oh, Abby. So we get down there, and damn is it dark. No light, no life. Only mushrooms. Lots and lots of mushrooms. So through various notes, it seems like the government was trying to contain the virus for research purposes instead of just eliminating the test subjects. And they learned too late that they just should have firebombed the whole building.
The fuck is that?
You said it, sister. So we turn on a generator which mysteriously has gas, but this is pretty standard at this point, and begin to search for an ambulance. We find an ambulance, and it's got everything we need. What? You thought I would shit on the game just because we found everything in the ambulance? No, it actually makes sense that the ambulance would have all the stuff they would need just in case. So this boss, which is unofficially known as the Rat King, is actually pretty intense. This thing gave me the heebie-jeebies every time I saw it. You gotta run away from it at this first part, and then you can fight it one-on-one when you got some more room. This thing is an unrelenting force of nature. I basically threw everything I had at it, and still had to scavenge for supplies, quickly making pipe bombs before it burst through the wall. I also now see why Abby doesn't have any Molotovs. This section would be very hard with all of the water on the ground. There's even a stalker that breaks off halfway through the fight, and after you're done, if you don't kill it, you gotta hunt it down and kill the hardest stalker in the game. This thing is faster, stronger, and more resilient than your typical stalker. But man, was it a rush to finally take this thing down. That was a good fight. So Abby escapes, almost killing Lev for scaring her, and they go back to the aquarium. Kinda coincidence how there's a boat right there when all the WLF members are looking for her, and they're all getting ready to assault an island, which would probably require a lot of boats. So Yara gets out of her operation, and Lev rushes in to see her, while Owen talks to Abby.
They're just kids.
I know.
Huh. To be honest, I always thought Yara was older than Abby, or at least around the same age. So they check on Yara, and it's the first time Abby seems anywhere near the emotion of happy. It then jumps to another dream sequence where Abby sees her dad as he just completed the surgery. It seems like she's finally at peace with herself. Really? No images of torturing Joel? She's at peace now? Okay. I guess they really just didn't want us to like Abby. This section had okay character development and exceptionally done gameplay. Probably one of the best parts of the game. Although, not gonna lie, it feels like nothing is really happening. Like in Ellie's story, at least she's moving towards a tangible goal of killing Abby, and anyone who gets in her way. But so far, it seems like it's find Owen, help these scars, find medical supplies for the scars. I feel like this would be a side quest in an open world game, but it's masquerading like a main quest. I don't know. I guess I just thought there would be more things that would intersect with Ellie's journey. So Abby wakes up alone. She runs into Mel and they overhear Lev and Yara arguing about something in the background. More on that in just a minute. Mel informs us that Owen's going to Santa Barbara and he invited Lev and Yara to come with him. At this point, I really hope Owen left a note to Mel telling her to meet him here. If not, I bet he didn't think she would actually lug her prego ass all the way down here by herself, or she would get killed along the way. One less responsibility, right, Owen? It's getting kinda hard to defend him. Like, all of these little subtle hints that maybe the writers didn't necessarily think all the way through just keep painting these people in worse and worse light. Anyways, Mel says to Abby she's actually going along with them, but not if Abby tags along. Okay, let me just talk about this trip to Santa Barbara with Mel in the picture. First off, it seems like a bit of a bad idea. I mean, if the rumor was just bullshit, then where is she gonna go give birth? I feel it would be way easier to give birth at the Wolf Stadium.
Not a great plan.
That being said, she roasts the fuck out of Abby here. Just listen to this.
He may fall for your little act with these kids, but I don't. There's nothing to fall for. Isaac's top scar killer suddenly had a change of heart. Nothing to do with Owen, right? I haven't always done the right thing. You're a piece of shit, Abby. You always have been. I'm done with you.
Those are pretty much all the complaints I have about Abby as a character. Betraying Mel's trust by letting Owen cheat with her, having no empathy for the horrible things she's done. No more than needs to be said. Great job, Mel. So Mel storms off, and Yara comes in to tell Abby that Lev has run off alone and they need to find him. Anyways, Yara and Alice get this little bonding experience. It just feels kind of weird and disjointed because they're literally right in the middle of searching for Lev. I feel like they had this scene scripted and ready to go with the gameplay, and they just didn't know where else to put it, so they just shoved it right here. Anyway, so it's here Yara tells us that she wants to leave with Owen, but Lev started to think about what kind of punishment their mom might face, because in their society, the parents can be blamed for the actions of the children. Yara doesn't really seem to care, since she knows that her mom is so devout that she'll probably be okay, and that if Lev were to somehow actually find her, their mom would probably want to kill Lev herself. If I'm not mistaken, this thinking dates back to the dawn of Western civilization with the concept of the family unit. The individual had not necessarily been conceived yet. Early Roman life, I think, would be the best example. It's actually kind of interesting. Yara tells Abby and that Lev has had these feelings building up for quite some time, and one day he decided to shave his head like the men to choose his own destiny. Turns out, the reason for this rebellion was because his assigned role in the community was to be a wife to one of the elders. Yeah, getting deed down by one of these elder guys seems like a reasonable thing to rebel against. So from then on, Lev's fate was sealed. She said she started screaming and hitting him when she found out. Kinda a dick move, but it's understandable knowing how she was brought up. To be honest here, Lev's story seems a lot more interesting. In my opinion, there's a lot of LGBTQ political statements that are shoehorned into media nowadays that don't really make a lot of sense, but this was done near perfectly in my opinion. I really would have loved to have seen Lev's story here. It grips my attention and curiosity way more than Abby's. I hope they explore some of these key interests, like Owen's burns, or how Abby met the Salt Lake crew, or even the WLF in the first place. Now that would have been a good use of flashbacks.
Mel's wrong, you know. You're a good person.
I mean, you guys met like 2 days ago, but sure, she did help you out. Anyway, so they find a toy shark to give to Lev. Owen enters the room, and Yara leaves on account of his weebishness. Abby and Owen start talking, and he wants her to come to Santa Barbara, but Abby at least wants to respect Mel's wishes. And of course, he doesn't care about the responsibility to his baby mama and child, because this dude is literally a child. Anyway, so it turns out Lev stealed a small boat and is going after his mom.
We'll head him off. We'll grab a boat from the marina. Hey, she just had surgery. I'm fine. How else am I gonna find him?
Both points are valid. Although I don't know why Abby's getting all pissy here. She already got his man. What more does she want? Back the fuck off this bitch. Damn.
I'll go with you.
Owen?
They're heading to the fucking island.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna let her go by herself.
Actually, you are.
I can help.
Yeah, by staying here and fixing the fucking sailboat. Get your priorities straight.
And if that's not the most hypocritical thing I've heard, I don't know what is. So we get to a marina to steal a boat, and they hear gunshots busting off in the distance. So Abby asks Yara to stay put. Abby follows the gunshots, which leads to her and Manny almost biffing it. Oh yeah, Manny's here too now. Manny says he was about to head to the boat to assault the island, but got pinned down by the sniper, and it took out his whole crew. This section was a nice change of gameplay. Personally, I love sniper sections where you have to slowly advance using your environment to your advantage and trying to outwit your opponent. I looked at some gameplay afterwards, and it looks like I took the smooth brain approach by sprinting from cover to cover instead of taking it slow. So they progress pretty nicely until the sniper starts shooting around them and attracts infected. I wonder what this reminds me of. It's actually a pretty cool section where you have to avoid infected and sniper fire at the same time. After we deal with the infected, we keep the pressure on the sniper and corner him. They decide to flank him, but the door won't open. Guess he didn't think the shooter would come back out the same door he just went through. Lucky for Abby, Manny's blood managed to grease up that door or something, cause Abby literally jumps through it. At least his dad can know his son didn't die for nothing. Abby inches closer and closer to the shooter's last known location, but gets knocked off her guard. They struggle for a bit until Yara teleports in to save Abby, pushing the sniper and his gun into the water. Oh yeah, the sniper was Tommy. I guess I should have seen that coming, but I actually didn't, even with the luring infected clue. I just kind of thought that was a general thing everyone would know about. So they take the boat to the island on an unpatrolled section and make their approach. I actually really like the design of the Scars Island. It's so primitive yet impressive. They got praying centers with wood carvings of the leader in doll form, fields to grow crop, and meat processing centers. It gives me serious Skyrim vibes, to be honest. Anyway, so I sneak past the patrols and make it to their house. They find the mom dead and Lev crying in the corner. As expected, Lev's mom flipped out and tried to murder him. Once again, it feels like the characters are doing really dumb moves to push the story forward. Although on the other hand, he is a kid. So Yara travels a bit further than she should for a woman with one arm and gets capped. Isaac shows up and is understandably pissed that Abby went AWOL for 3 days. Of all things on his priorities, he really wants to kill Lev, so he tells her to move. She says no, and right before he can execute either of them, a half-alive Yara comes in for a yoink and caps Isaac herself, and then promptly gets lit the fuck up, so they run away. I don't even know what to say about this. I really thought Isaac would be a bigger antagonist than this. Like, they introduced this guy as like kind of a scary boss type dude, but then he just dies out of nowhere. I don't know, it's just kind of underwhelming.
Come on, those were your fucking people. You're my people.
Damn, Abby. Lev's kind of right though. These people took you in and helped you get revenge. I'm pretty sure they are your people. In the next combat section, the wolves are all fair game at this point, and you don't have to try to sneak around them. It's at this point, I thought to myself, did Naughty Dog really do the same mistake they did with the first game? I'll explain. In the first game, I already mentioned how I thought the Fireflies were a joke because of all the hints and things we see and experience in the game. And in this game, I can see they're trying to make Abby a sympathetic character, just like they were trying to make the Fireflies a serious group in the first game. But because of everything we see and experience, I can't. She brutally murdered a defenseless Joel with no signs of remorse or guilt, abandons her duty to the WLF, helps her best friend cheat on her other friend, and then here she murders a bunch of her own people who are at least friendly with or, at worst, her friends. Again, without remorse. Ellie tortured Nora to death, and you could just see how distraught she was with herself over what she had to do. The actions that Abby has taken so far really makes me question if she's a sociopath.
We killed those wolves. It doesn't matter.
Abby!
Sure, she's done some good things like saving Yara and Lev, but she's known them for 2 days and 2 nights. Now that I think about it, the second day was completely pointless. We spent the whole day getting supplies for Yara and then she dies. Once again, I get what they're going for, but once again, I don't really feel much of anything. We barely got to interact or know anything about these people. Anyways, I think I died the most amount of times in this combat section than any other. I think it's just because it was so tight yet open, and it was really easy to get spotted unless you went under the water, and I'm more of a stealth boy. That being said, the section after this is probably one of my favorite. Both Scars and WLF members are duking it out. It's so chaotic. I wish more of the game was like this, to be honest, where you could slip into a conflict between the two groups and then slip out before they noticed you. So they steal a horse and they ride it through an uncharted action sequence. They get thrown off, but at least the horse survives this time. Abby loses her backpack and has to fight this big ass dude and yelling her name. It's actually kind of cool, because he gets more and more damaged as the fight goes on. Like he gets slashed on the back, and then his mouth splits open at his scars. Abby uses the open wound to distract him, gets an arrow through his chest, and then Abby uses that same arrow to stab him in the neck and face. So they make it to the boat and escape in the nick of time. I actually do like how Abby is now Lev's protector. It's kind of sweet. I just wish there would have been more turmoil from Lev here. I mean, his entire family is dead because of his identity. I just wish he would have had a conversation with Abby in the boat here, questioning if it was even worth it to feel comfortable in his own skin at the cost of his family, and Abby reassuring him he deserves to feel the way he does. I just hope for him it was worth it. They make it back to the aquarium, and we already know some fuck shit went down as they start to discover everything that Ellie went through. Alice, Mel, and Owen's dead bodies, mostly. This is probably the second time in the entire game Abby shows some actual sadness or any emotion other than anger. This part pisses me off the most. I couldn't believe this actually happened. Really, my dude? She left the fucking map there. Dude, that's so dumb. Oh my god. What the hell? If this was the only time a coincidence like this happened, then I would understand. But the whole story has been like this. I feel like a broken record pointing all this out every couple of minutes. So Lev and Abby make it to the theater where Ellie's hiding out. They find a way in through a window. As they sneak in, they overhear the radio communications at Scar Island.
Isaac's dead?
Isaac is fucking dead. Anyone else go up the island? Echo, you're the first to call in. No word from the other unit. Jesus Christ, where the fuck was the backup?
Oh yeah, that's right. We killed him. That's one of our antagonists, folks. An antagonist that died so unforgettably, I actually literally forgot about it right after it happened. I just don't think his death was done right at all. I already said this, but whatever. So they make their way downstairs, where they catch Tommy off guard, and that's when Jesse gets capped. That's a pretty good shot after being busted in on like that, especially when Ellie had the drop on you, and she got disarmed in 0.2 seconds. So the whole monologue thing happens here, and Tommy distracts her, but gets domed for his troubles. This is probably a good time to bring this up, but we never actually get a chance to understand Tommy. He's always seemed like more of a softer version of Joel, and I would have loved to have gotten to experience more with him. So Abby moves in on Ellie as Lev covers the exit.
And his name is John C.
Good thing she didn't start off with her fucking knife. So this section is a boss fight proper, and it's kinda cool, I'll admit. I wish there was more stuff like this. Like if they had 2 or 3 more of these types of boss fights, where you're both playing a cat and mouse sort of game, that would be awesome. Also, when this fight started, I rushed in and got myself killed, and I actually hoped, just for a second, that there would be some sort of secret ending if you lost this fight, but no such luck. I also think this is kind of funny, but go look up any YouTuber, literally almost any YouTuber playing through this section. When they get to this part, they literally let Ellie kill them. I feel like that was the reaction most fans of the game actually took, so I don't think I'm actually alone in this opinion. Anyways, Abby gets the upper hand, and I think she breaks Ellie's arm here? At least it sounds like it. Dina then comes out of nowhere to help out, but gets an arrow in the back for her troubles, while Abby smashes her face into the floor. Ellie then begs Abby not to kill Dina because she's pregnant.
She's pregnant. Good. Abby.
What the fuck, Abby? I know they just tried to kill you, and they had just recently killed your quote-unquote friend who was pregnant, but they're both incapacitated, and it just so happens while she's mid-neck slit, decides to stop because Lev said some shit. If he wasn't there, she would have killed her. Some people say Abby and Ellie are the same in this aspect, but this is not at all the same context. Ellie was killing in self-defense, not knowing she was preggo, but Abby knew Dina was pregnant and was still going to kill her. Granted, Ellie did just kill her pregnant friend, but to call Mel and Abby friends is being overly generous. Anyways, so Abby lets Ellie off with another warning to stay away or she'll kill her for real next time. Once again, maybe not the best idea since she's kinda killed off all of Ellie's friends now. Ellie went buck wild from one death. I can't imagine what she's gonna do for Jesse. Oh, I guess nothing. Even though I just gave this segment some shit, to be fair, it went better than I thought it would. And that's saying a lot. Anyway, so it fades to black. And then we see a beautiful house with beautiful scenery. And despite how they left things, everything seems to have turned out for Ellie and Dina. They got a nice farm with livestock, and Jesse's baby, JJ, is growing nice and big. I'd estimate he's about a year old, maybe a bit less or more. That means the time jump could be, at most, 2 years. One thing that was super weird and off-putting to me was how big JJ's head looked in some shots. Maybe it's just me, but this kid's head looks freaking huge when I'm walking around. Anyways, I actually really like this section. Ellie's cracking jokes, and she's acting like her old self. It's quite the breath of fresh air.
Ooh, look at Mama go. Mm? Oh, wow. Ooh. Oh, hello.
Anyways, we see how they do things in their new farm life, and everything seems to be okay. Until Ellie has a PTSD flashback of Joel in pain from the day he was murdered, and flips out, only being snapped out by Dina's voice. It then jumps ahead to Ellie coming back home from hunting to find... What? Tommy? I thought he was dead. I mean, he did get pretty fucked up. I find it a bit of a stretch he survived getting shot in the head and was able to get back to Jackson, let alone medical attention, with Ellie presumably having a broken arm and Dina with God knows what type of shoulder and head trauma while being pregnant. But I guess Joel did survive getting impaled, which is usually a death sentence without surgery. I say usually because there is some debate between being impaled on a sharp object compared to a blunt object. And it was a piece of rebar, so it might be possible. Well, if it doesn't get infected at least. But even that's a bit of a stretch, so I'll give him that. So Tommy mentions that Maria didn't want to use Puppet, so they broke up. It turns out Tommy has replaced his lack of getting ass with his lack of getting revenge, as he gives Ellie a lead on Abby's location in Santa Barbara. Dina informs him that they can't go and that they gave all that shit up, and Ellie reluctantly agrees.
Well, I can't go.
Yeah, no shit. I actually really like this scene though, because in the beginning of the game, Tommy was telling Ellie off on behalf of Maria, and now it's Ellie telling Tommy off on behalf of Dina. It's a nice little shoes on the other foot thing. Although Ellie doesn't take the opportunity to rub Tommy's face in this hypocrisy. He leaves, but not before guilt-tripping the fuck out of Ellie, and Dina gives JJ to Ellie so she can throw some verbal hands at Tommy. So obviously a lot of shit happened in this section, and like always, I like the gameplay, but the story was very frustrating. I know I said this before and I'll say it again, but I feel like a broken record saying this all the time. But it's truly how I feel about most of the game so far. So the story's on the tail end here, and I can't really say I'm enjoying it. And if that's what they were going for, then they passed with flying colors. However, if Game of Thrones has taught me anything, is that an entertainment property can be some of, if not the best story ever written, but the ending can make or break the experience as a whole. At this point, I'm really curious and cautious to see where it goes from here. So Ellie can't sleep, most likely thinking about Joel. She reads her journal in the next room, and the details aren't that important, but it more or less is describing the pain and guilt she feels over Joel's death. She starts playing the beginning of Future Days, but stops, really letting that last chord ring out. Real quick, I thought guitars would play a bigger part in this story. Like, I thought there would be more times where Ellie would just sit down and bang out a song every here or there. And as we progressed, the songs would get deeper, more emotional, angry, or all three as Ellie slowly unravels. Kind of bummed, really. So a flashback happens, and it's the night of the winter dance, the day before Joel dies. Jesse informs Ellie that Joel has been really critical over Jesse's patrol routes, and especially right before Ellie goes out. While a bit controlling, this is sweet. It shows that Joel still cares for Ellie, even if he can't physically do it.
She's putting on quite the show.
I give you guys 2 weeks until you're back together.
Not gonna happen. She, say something to you?
So Dina dances with Ellie and gets a kiss out of it. like what the fuck? They couldn't have gotten a better take out of Ellie's actress here. That is by far the creepiest smile I've seen in a while. Right on cue, the sexist dude masquerading as the PC police tells Ellie and Dina the PTA is not welcomed here. Dina says some slick shit, and he calls her a name that means a man-made river. And Ellie doesn't take too kindly to it. Joel interjects his own opinion, and the guy is escorted out. Ellie gets pissed at Joel for attempting to wiggle his way back into her life, so he leaves. And how exactly did I feel about this flashback?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
I mean, it didn't really tell us much of anything we didn't already know. Jesse's still simping, Dina kissed Ellie, Joel wants back into Ellie's life, and sexism is bad. It was nice to see how things were before everything got fucked up. Also, the sandwiches do make a lot more sense. We go back to the present day, and Ellie's packing up when Dina shows up.
Hey.
Oh, shit!
So Ellie wants to finish what Abby started, which I guess is what Joel started, which I guess is what the Fireflies started. But Dina doesn't want to lose anyone else, so she gives her an ultimatum. Give up revenge, or she's leaving. But Ellie's mind is made up, and leaves for Santa Barbara, California. I do like how she is wearing Joel's jacket. It's a nice touch. The perspective changes over to Abby and Lev, who have finally gotten to Santa Barbara. This is a pretty short section, and I'm actually kind of pissed, because Abby has one of my favorite weapons, which is a double-barreled shotgun, and I never even got to shoot it. At least force us into a combat section. But no, I was so MLG at this point, I killed all the infected silently. So they go to this house, and eventually Lev finds a secret passage that leads to a secret radio room. She tries a few frequencies, and finally one responds. A small nitpick here, but I really hate how they aren't using radio talk. Like, how the hell are you supposed to know when the other person is done talking without saying over and out for when you're done talking? Anyways, the guy on the radio tells her they're based out of Catalina Island in a big domed building. They say their goodbyes, and Abby is ecstatic. But their victory is short-lived as they get ambushed by these two guys. Lev backs Ellie up by shooting this guy before he gets Falco punched the fuck out by this fat ass. God damn, I lied. This is the funniest moment in the whole damn game. I don't know why this is so funny, it just is. This guy doesn't really have a name either, but the Last of Us 2 community on Reddit has dubbed him Fat Geralt. Geralt being the protagonist from the Witcher series. While I can see why they would call him this, I see him more as a Doug the Bounty Hunter cosplayer. So that's what I'll call him from now on. Anyways, so the men tie them up, and they imply some not so nice things are gonna happen to them. The perspective changes again to Ellie coming across the boat that Abby and Owen did the nasty in. But this time, it's on a beach in Santa Barbara. So she finds a note talking about the place and heads off to explore. I really do like the way Ellie looks in this. She really looks like she's been through the ringer to get to this place. Her hair's grown out, and her sun-baked skin looks badass. I read her journal for a little bit, and other than a few entries where she writes about missing Dina and the baby, she mentions having to go to Las Vegas, hearing what sounded like thousands of infected inside the city just on the outskirts. That sounds like a cool location the Last of Us series should revisit in the future. There's a note here written by someone who escaped from a group known as the Rattlers. They're probably the dudes who tied up Lev and Abby not too long ago. So I get past a few infected, and Ellie's ass gets caught in a snare trap and gets slightly impaled. She wakes up a little bit later, and she thinks she sees Abby, so she calls out to her. But nope, it's good old Doug the Bounty Hunter and Bud coming to collect her. They cut her down, and Doug's friend has a close call with one of the infected, which Ellie takes the time to make fun of him for how scared he looked. So he scares her by bringing her closer to an upside down clicker that seems to be used as a counterweight. Seems a bit strange. I wonder how they got them up there. But you'll see later that this crew has a more comfortable relationship with the infected. Anyways, what this guy didn't expect was for Ellie to throw herself at the infected, getting them both bit in the process. But she's immune, so it's no big deal for her. While the infected is eating this guy, she uses him as a human shield to block Doug's incoming fire, and uses his dying friend's gun to kneecap him. Truly a pro gamer move. Doug begs for his life, and exchanges the information of his base's location for his safety. Cause I guess Doug here was able to overhear Ellie calling out Abby's name, and so he tries to use that to save his own ass. I love how he points out he can get Ellie to her before the infection takes place, and you can see Ellie doesn't even give a shit. So Ellie has no obligation to fulfill this request, so she ices him once he gives the location. One shot, one kill.
I swear.
I think it would have been a cool opportunity for Ellie to say, "That's okay, I believe you," as a little callback to the first game, even though she wasn't there to see the event herself. Also, I don't really get why the Last of Us 2 community is so obsessed with Fat Geralt, to the point where they have a whole category for him. This dude is barely in the game. I thought he would have a bigger role to play. He even has a different color palette and sunglasses. He just kind of looks like one of those boss type dudes that's going to be important later. But no, he doesn't even have an official name. So Ellie stitches herself up and heads in the direction Doug gave her until she meets some enemies, where she sees a group of rattlers surrounding this one guy, but he shoots himself instead of being captured, which if Abby and Lev are in there, they aren't living well. Also, Ellie picks up a new gun, which is pretty cool because it's a silenced SMG, I think, and that's incredibly useful. But I actually barely used it since the aim accuracy was a little bit too big for my liking, so I stuck with my silenced pistol and bow. We make it to the Rattlers compound, and there seems to be a lot of things to do, like feed the Rattlers to their own infected that they have chained up. But I was more interested in stealth, so I snuck through the outside and made it to the inside of the compound. I unhooked the infected that are chained up on the inside and used the ensuing chaos to sneak further into the base. This compound is probably one of the funnest parts of the game. There's so many ways to approach and attack them that really makes the gameplay shine. I just wish more of the game was like this. I also wish we had more of the Rattlers. They're only in the game for this short section, and that's it. So Ellie makes it to the holding cells and free the prisoners, which immediately grab guns and assault the base. Ellie asks them where Abby is, and besides a slight argument over Ellie's bite that almost ends in a firefight, it's resolved when the prisoner tells her Abby tried to escape and is down at the pillars. By the way he tells her about it, it doesn't sound like it's a good place to be. We then see that the pillars are literal pillars in the ground they strung people up on and left them there, almost like crucifixion. So after a little bit of searching, we find Abby strung up and defenseless. And god damn does she look different. She actually looks more proportionally accurate to how buff women usually look, in my opinion. Because judging by all the muscle she lost, I'd say she must have been up there for a year. Alright, so this is your chance to get even, Ellie. What does she do? Does she cap Ellie in the lung, letting her gasp for air? Or maybe she just lets her die up there. Oh, she cuts her down and lets her cut down Lev and make it to a rowboat at the shores, a little ways away. Ellie seems like she's almost about to sail away here until she gets a glimpse of Joel in her head and challenges Abby to a one-on-one duel. Okay. I mean, Abby didn't really necessarily fight fair with your boy Joel. So I don't know why you'd want to do this whole honorable fight thing other than a final boss fight, which is exactly what happens. But Ellie still has her switchblade out, so I'd hardly call this a fair fight. I don't think I've ever fought so hard in a video game before. Abby then loses her knife, so they just start duking it out. And after lots of fighting, Ellie gets the upper hand and starts drowning Abby. But not before Abby gets one last shot in by biting off 2 of her damn fingers in an attempt to get a small HP boost. But the fight seems all but over after Ellie submerges Abby's head under the water. So this game was okay. I mean, the gameplay was fun, but wait, what? She lets Abby go? I'm kind of surprised. I mean, Ellie traveled hundreds of miles on foot to reach Abby, and she just lets her go at the last minute? I feel like if this is the Ellie we know, she would have ended Abby up on the pillar. She then travels back to the farm, but Dina and JJ are nowhere to be found. So she tries to soothe her worries with a little song. Oh, that's right. So we get another flashback to the night of the winter dance. Ellie meets up with Joel outside of his house, and they make small talk before Ellie tells him he needs to stop controlling her life, referring to him criticizing Jesse about Ellie's patrol routes. He agrees and then tries another not-so-subtle way to maneuver back into her life by asking about Dina, saying Dina would be lucky to have her.
But I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
Hey Ellie, you know who else didn't give you a chance? The Fireflies. They were perfectly fine with not waking you up and killing you without your consent, without you even weighing the likelihood of the chance that your sacrifice would even create a vaccine. And then Joel stands there like a deer in the headlights and says,
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Really not helping your argument, man. I already talked about this earlier, but there were many reasons why trusting the Fireflies was not in Joel, Ellie, or the world's best interest. The way the game shows this without any ambiguity or justification really pisses me off. Did the writers have amnesia in their own game? I'll explain more on this later. Anyways, Ellie and Joel want to repair their relationship, and that's where they left things before he died. And then goes back to the present day, and Ellie puts the guitar down that Joel got her and walks off into the woods, her future uncertain. Or at least to go buy a harmonica. Kind of a dick move, she left the guitar that Joel got her as a gift, just fully strung up like that. I mean, that neck is gonna warp like crazy, especially leaning it up against something like that.
That's so. That's a lot.
I really don't know where to start with all this. Most of the issues I have with the game is the story. There's not too many plot holes or inconsistencies. The only one I can think of is how the game portrays Joel's decision at the end of the game. The thing I do have a problem with is the overwhelming number of coincidences that happen to push the story forward. Like Abby finding Joel without doing any recon or testing of their defenses. How Joel and Tommy aren't in a group patrol to clear out the migrating horde of infected. How Jesse finds Ellie and Dina in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a blizzard. Possibly nowhere near Joel was sent to patrol. Or how trusting Joel and Tommy are of a traveling group of heavily armed individuals so close to the base. How Nick doesn't take the chance to kill Ellie and Dina when he gets the chance. How Ellie, being an idiot in this one scene, caused her to kill 2 people. How Abby is able to shoot Jesse while taken off guard, but Ellie gets disarmed in 0.2 seconds. How Ellie didn't take a chance to end Abby up on the pillar because she wanted a fair fight while Joel was tortured to death. And possibly the worst one, how Abby found Ellie's map on the ground that leads right back to the theater. That really pissed me off. Like, not one time when Tommy, Jesse, and Ellie were traveling back to the base did Ellie go like, oh wait, there's a shortcut over here, let me look at my map, oh no, I don't have it. This was a big game, and I gotta give it a bit of credit for taking so many risks. Unfortunately, I think the ones that fail far outweigh the ones that succeed. There is a chance, and for me this is being overly generous, but they could knock the third game out of the park, making it a more well-rounded experience. Not to make comparisons between 2 franchises, but like Star Wars' original trilogy. You know, I just thought of something to end off my final gameplay session with, and it's something no one online has really been talking about, and it really pisses me off about the story, but Ellie never got the reason why Joel was killed. Like, yeah, she probably thought it had to do with Joel stealing her from the Fireflies, but she never actually got the specifics. She never learned it was Abby's dad that killed Joel. I just thought Abby would have mentioned that at least once before they parted ways. Like, oh yeah, your dad killed my dad. Thanks for letting me live. Okay, bye. It's hard to say I liked this game, because I don't hate it. The gameplay is some of the best I've experienced this console generation. The combat is just so fluid and dynamic, it's rife with replayability. I still find myself going back to New Game Plus mode, and having fun seeing all the different dialogue and tactics the AI come up with. It's truly a shame the multiplayer might not be a thing, since Naughty Dog has been pretty tight-lipped about all of the Last of Us products going forward. I don't play a lot of battle royales, but the looting and combat mechanics would fit the genre like a glove. That being said, the story is all over the place. If I take a step back and look at the story beats, the game doesn't actually sound half bad. Joel dies, sending Ellie on a quest for revenge. At the same time, her killer tries to be a better person by caring for someone other than herself, but doing so causes the death of all of her friends by the hand of Ellie. She confronts her and lets her live, but then that decision catches up with her, and it ends with Ellie realizing revenge is pointless and cost her everything she loved. A bit depressing, but not bad. These aren't the worst plot lines in the world. Not the best, but not the worst. But as we have seen here, it is the execution that leaves me pissed off. I get what they were going for. They wanted a whole change of perspective thing that was supposed to challenge our perspective of the story as a whole. A game series I can think of that did this right is the Nier series, where you had to play the game through 4 to 5 times before you got the final ending. But in the end, I really don't feel any different. Ellie was okay, if not a bit underexplored, but Dina kind of seemed a little bit like a third wheel in the story after the first day in Seattle, and their relationship was never really fleshed out. I kept waiting for the game to show me what they see in each other beyond the fact they're attracted to one another. But it never happened. The game's portrayal of Abby was underbaked to say the least. She just comes off as sociopathic or psychopathic, whichever applies. The few examples that come to mind are torturing a defenseless man to death while feeling no remorse, watching your friends die in front of you, and having little to no reaction or guilt of their death. Also killing people who took you in and supported you like it was nothing for 2 people you met 2 days ago with little to no reaction or guilt was a big one. Her whole arc just felt rushed. Like, I feel Abby's story should have been a whole game in and of itself. Some people are comparing Abby's arc to Joel's arc in the first game, but context is everything. Yeah, Joel tortured people, but it was only to get information, and he quickly disposed of them after they were no more use to him. He didn't play with his food like Abby did. Yeah, he watched a man and his brother, who he started to grow close to, kill his own brother and then himself. But he and Ellie were shaken up over this for at least a few months, not a few moments. Manny's blood hadn't even dried on her face before it was back to business as Abby. Yeah, Joel killed the Fireflies, but they barely knew him. A lot of people don't realize this, but in the first game, Joel is kind of portrayed as Tess's second-hand man. Tess is the one who made the deal with the Fireflies. Like, even Tess's own guards don't recognize Joel. Tess is the one who made the deal with the Fireflies. Joel never gave a shit about them or their cause, and only delivered Ellie to fulfill the request of Tess's final wish, and later cause he grew to care for Ellie. Do you see how one character has layers to them, while the other one is basic at best? It's tough to say this game isn't worth your time. There are some good stories in this. Ironically, most of the side stories you find in the form of notes are pretty cool and really flesh out the world. It makes me wish I could have experienced them instead. Which brings me back to my previous point that The Last of Us should have been an anthology series. The story of Boris, while underbaked on the details, like most of the side stories in the game, had a great conclusion. And it was genuinely awesome to investigate the bank in the beginning of the game. When I ask myself why the writing is so strange, two things come to mind. One is that the first game had Bruce Straley, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, lead the development of the game, while Neil Druckmann was the creative director. However, in the case of Last of Us Part 2, Neil Druckmann was put in charge as creative director again, but without Bruce Straley overseeing everything. Neil did say that the game was supposed to reflect his childhood growing up in Israel, and that is a unique and interesting perspective to have. But in my opinion, whatever he was trying to convey here didn't work. The second thing is that Neil Druckmann was at some point in talks with Anita Sarkeesian and cites her as an influencer in the creative direction. Do with that information what you will. On that note, some say this game leans too heavily into identity politics, but I thought it was a bit reserved and didn't beat the player over the head with a political message. And on another note on the writing, I have a theory. A conspiracy theory. As you have seen, this game is riddled with flashbacks. They're in very strange places, and sometimes they flow, but most of the time they don't. And I've said this before, but they literally force feed you gameplay information. Some you may already know. But my theory, if true, will give a lot more sense as to why these flashbacks are a thing. And that is, all of these flashbacks were meant to come first in the story. They were meant to be a tutorial section before we got too heavy into the game. Also, all of these scenes kind of flow better in the narrative if you play them together. I'll splice together some examples. At the end of the first cutscene, Ellie is just strumming some random notes, and then the time jump happens, and we see Ellie 4 years later. But if we play it chronologically, she's strumming randomly, and then boom, it cuts to her playing it a lot better, showing us a passage of time and her advancing in skill level. Doesn't that seem to flow a lot better? I'll give another example. At the end of the birthday section, we still see Ellie feeling shitty. She wasn't the cure for humanity. And then right after that, Ellie wakes up back in Seattle in the present time. But if we play it chronologically, we then cut to her zoning out while Tommy is talking to her during the hunting trip, the questioning of Joel's narrative still fresh in her mind. The same thing can be applied to Abby's story, but not as well. This brings me to the second and weaker part of the theory. The game was meant to be split up into 2 campaigns, and possibly with 2 different endings. This one's a bit more far-fetched, since it doesn't seem to be in Naughty Dog's MO. All in all, The Last of Us 2 is a beautiful game with amazing combat. I just can't get over how strange and at times bold, but at other times clunky the story is. For what they needed to do, the story needed to be done with pinpoint accuracy, and for me, it just didn't work. If you had fun playing this game and enjoyed the story, that's actually great. At least someone had some fun. Before I go to the outro, I'll say something prolific. Something that was never said in-game, but something I came to my own conclusion with. Something I haven't been able to get out of my head since. In one of the flashbacks, with Abby, we see the man who was a peaceful and at times controlling father. His wife was murdered, which he didn't attempt to stop since he was such a pacifist, and his kids ran off, so he just sat in his favorite chair in their playing room waiting for the kids to come back, and eventually wasted away. It made me think about the characters in the story. All of the good characters in this story, whether it be protective, honorable, loyal, or friendly, they all wind up dead. Perhaps, in a world as brutal as this, there is no room for such peaceful people. And when you kill off the best of us, you're left with the last of us. Part 2. Thank you all for watching the video. It was my first attempt at anything like this. It took many hours to put this thing together, so just watching means so much to me. The script ended up being 58 pages long. Yeah. Anyways, if you want more analytical meme content, then consider subscribing. Last but not least, let me know what you thought about The Last of Us Part 2, and the review as a whole. Did you have similar thoughts? Was I completely wrong? Was there anything I missed? Leave it in the comments below. I got a few ideas for my next video. I was thinking of doing The Order 1886, because I really thought I liked that game, and it's come to my attention everyone thought it was trash. I was also thinking about doing Catherine Full Body Edition. That game had a real impact on me in a very crazy time in my life, and actually helped shape my moral compass a bit. Or I was thinking of doing Outer Worlds. I heard it was a great game, just a little short. And with all this lackluster writing, I feel I could use a break. And with that, I wish you all a farewell. And remember to try to see things with eyes unclouded. That's my thing. It's like my catchphrase. It'll do for now. It's probably cringe as hell, but oh well, I already paid my artist for the banner. Anyways, once again, goodbye, and thank you.